You're going to call to order. Can we take roll?
Watson,
Here.
Priest,
Here.
Hall,
Here.
Maxwell,
Here.
Lamb,
Here.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lawson,
Here.
McKnight,
Here.
Prophet.
Okay, first up, we need to add a couple of items to the agenda. First is going to be a presentation by Steve Snyder as far as IMBA goes. I believe we discussed that briefly at last meeting. If we could go ahead and take roll on whether to accept that to add it onto the agenda.
McKnight,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Watson.
Yes. And the second item is a presentation by the Audubon Society, I believe, about the bird blind. And if we could take roll to accept that on the agenda as well.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Next up is to approve the July 7th minutes. Want to go? Has everybody had a chance to review those?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as read.
Second.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a roll.
Watson,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
McKnight.
Yes.
And first up, we have Logan Schwartz from the Eagle Scout Project proposal on Lake Wilson. Excuse me.
Hello. Hello. Is it working? Can everybody hear me?
Get a little closer to the mic. There you go.
Is this better?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for letting me come in front of you today to present this to you. My name is Logan Schwartz. I'm 17 years old. I'm a Life Scout at Troop 102 here in Fayetteville. We have our meetings at the Central United Methodist Church on Dixon Street. I'm here today requesting approval of a service project at the Lake Wilson Park Trail entrance. Early July, might have been late June, I had a meeting with Allison Jumper, and the whole goal of our meeting was to discuss areas in Fayetteville that could possibly use improvement, and she brought to my attention that the Lake Wilson area could use a lot of improvement, and so I drove out there and I looked around to see if I could find any project ideas myself, and here are some of the things that I thought of. Whenever I was walking around, I noticed that there were a lot of drainage issues around the pavilion. There, right at the trail entrance, whenever it rains, a lot of mud is created along the hillside of the pavilion, and there's a hill at the corner of the pavilion, and it washes mud up onto the cement slab, actually. And it gives the pavilion a very dirty and unattractive overall look, in my opinion. Also, there's a bench there at the entrance, and one of the boards is bowed downwards, and it's also unpainted. And then also, one of the two trash cans that are under the pavilion is lacking a trash can barrier, and that's making it more susceptible to falling over and littering the area with trash and whatnot. Here are a few pictures of what I was just explaining. As you can see, mud is being washed up onto the cement slab there at that corner, and along the back side, a lot of mud is created in the rain. There's another picture of the wash up. Here's the bench. As you can see, the front board is slightly bowed downwards and it's unpainted, and then the rest of the bench is also very faded. Here's another picture of the bench. Here's the trash cans. As you can obviously see, the trash can with the barrier is a lot nicer looking. It makes the pavilion a lot more attractive. The solution. For the drainage problem, what I want to do is build a French drain around the hillside of the pavilion. That would be digging a trench, laying down PVC pipe, having some mesh filtering in between the PVC and the air, and then we'd fill up all the way to ground level with gravel. And that would, rather than creating a lot of mud and wash up onto the cement slab, that would carry the rainwater around the pavilions, around the sides, and down on into the lake. For the bench, I plan to replace the bowed-in board with a new straight board, and also to prevent future bowing of the board, I'll be attaching a bracket to the new board and the old board, giving it extra strength so it won't bow in the future. And then I also plan on scraping away all of the old paint and repainting the bench with a brown color as similar to the existing color that's already there. For the trash can barrier, I just want to build a duplicate of the barrier that already exists. Here's a detail of the drainage plan. My scoutmaster sitting right over here off to the side happens to be an architect, and he's helped me out a lot with this. As you can see, we'll have a trench. It's about 2 feet deep. In the bottom of the trench, we'll be having a 6-inch in diameter PVC pipe. And in the top of the PVC pipe will be holes drilled. And we'll have mesh fabric, like landscape fabric, a little bit above that to allow dirt and whatnot to be sifted out so it won't get in the drain and clog it up. Here's a bird's eye view of the drainage plan. We're not 100% sure on how far we want to extend the end pipes, and so we just have extend to daylight on the plan. Rather than having a normal pop-up system to let water come out, we plan on having the pipe come straight out of the hillside, and then we're going to be building a decorative rock structure around the pipes to make it noticeable and also just make it look good. Here are some materials and tools that I'll be acquiring for this project. This is everything that I thought of that is necessary to make this happen. I will not be requesting any materials or tools from the city. I'll be providing it all myself. Funding and donations, I'll be getting $100 from the Home Depot corporate store and also from the Lowe's corporate store. And I happen to know the manager at Lowe's, and he is going to throw in an extra $100 from that individual store credit. All the gravel and decorative rocks are going to be provided by Schwartz Stone Company, donated by them, and any additional funding needs are going to be provided by my family. And so I'm requesting no donations or funding by the city. Here are some anticipated work days that I've thought of. I'd like to begin the project on August 16th, Saturday at 8 a.m. Both of these weekends are, as of now, scheduled into my Boy Scout Troop's calendar for work days. I do not think it's going to take this long. I really accounted for about double of what I'm expecting, just in case. What my plan is to get it knocked out the first weekend up there, the 16th and 17th, and then if there's anything else that needs to be done, just like small things, then I can go back myself, maybe with a couple friends or something, and finish it up. I don't think that second work weekend will be needed. And that'll be accounting for, if both of those weekends were to be used, it'd be accounting for about 300 plus man hours. Any questions?
Are we going to help you dig that, the French drain? Pick and shovel, you're going to pick and shovel that French drain?
Yes, picks and shovels and hose. We're going to be leveling it out and everything all ourselves.
Okay.
Byron, have you been overseeing the layout of this plan and everything? Okay.
How far away from the foundation do you plan on putting the French drain?
The trench is nearly right up against the cement slab, but the drain will be about 2 feet away from it, down under the earth. 2 feet horizontally away from it, I mean.
Looks good.
Is that it? No further questions?
Other questions? I'd entertain a motion.
Move that we accept the plan as presented.
Second?
Okay, can we take a roll?
Watson,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Profit.
Thank you, Logan.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Oh, yeah.
second up is going to be John Wolf from the Eagle Scout project proposal, and this will be Lake Fayetteville on the disc golf course.
Okay, is this a good volume for you guys? Okay. My name is John Wolf. I am part of Troop 116. I am a life scout and hoping to get my Eagle quite soon. I am 15 years old, and my troop meets at Sequoia Methodist Church. I got the idea for doing my project from Mr. Humphrey. I emailed him for any ideas for a project, and he said that I could do a footbridge at Lake Fayetteville. And I went there, and I said that I think this would be reasonable and a really good project that I could do. Okay. The bridge is going to be at the North Shore Disc Golf Place. It is 38 feet long, or the width of it. It is about 6 feet deep, and the problem is that there's on one side of the creek, or dry creek, is the start of the hole, and then the end of the hole is on the other side, and so the players have to go into the creek and out to finish up the hole. My solution is that I'm going to build a bridge across it. I'm going to have 30-foot telephone poles, put them in the ground so the bridge is more sturdier. And I would also have a railing and stuff. It will be built 1 foot underneath the edge of the dry creek so that bikers can't go over it. That was something that Mr. Humphrey suggested, and that's what he thought would be the best, because he doesn't really want bikers to break it or find an easy path over it. In this sketch, I drew a top view, side view, and bottom view. You can see that there's going to be telephone poles, that's the long poles across. I'm also going to be using concrete to make sure that it really does hold in place and hold still and doesn't move around a lot. I'm going to have about 4 by 4 by 5 feet posts and drill a hole through them and put a rope through them for the railing. And right there, you can see that there's concrete underneath the telephone poles to hold it in place. And I have some landscape stones that will make a good stepping onto the bridge, and people don't just fall 1 foot onto the bridge. And that's the front or end view of the bridge. That is the railing plan, handrail detail. Yeah, I'm going to cut into the telephone poles so that the posts have a flat and sturdy thing to hook onto, because if you just drill it in, you don't really get much surface to have the posts in. Working days, I haven't really planned on what kind of working days. I'm going to be working on weekends and then maybe some weekdays. It depends on my schedule and that kind of stuff. But I'm just doing it based on how long until I get my materials and how many people come and work on my project. It basically depends on those factors. Materials, Mr. Humphrey said that the Parks and Rec department could provide the 30-foot telephone poles. If there's anything else that you could provide me with, you can tell him and he can email me and we can work this out. I am hoping to get some donations from Home Depot, and that's just in the process right now. Any questions?
So besides the telephone poles, is there any additional materials that you're going to need from the Parks Department?
I think the only main thing, you guys don't have to do this, but I think the concrete, I went over the materials and how much I would need, and I would need like 9 cubic feet of concrete, and I don't think I can really get a donation on those. So if you guys could do that, that could really help me out.
Byron, is that something the Parks Department can do?
Okay.
Everything else is taken care of?
Yep, everything else is good.
Byron, is the plan to leave that current walking path as well, or is it going to go right over the top of that? Because I believe not everybody makes it through that gap, and so people do utilize that to enter to find discs.
Yeah, this would just go to the right of those stairs, and we talked about trying to rebuild those stairs as well. But this would go to the right so that we can construct the fly disc.
Okay.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, take roll, please.
Profit,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Watson.
Yes. Okay, next up is a
Thank
presentation.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. And next up is a presentation by the Botanical Garden, by the park staff, okay?
Yeah.
Philip, before the Botanical Garden comes up, I would like to give just a brief history of how we got to this point and kind of what our role was being park staff. The current Botanical Garden's lease boundary extends from where the present Botanical Gardens is located now, all the way along the south side of the lake shore, almost to Veterans Park. And so, in late 2012, Botanical Garden staff and president approached us about revising their master plan and changing their lease boundary. They wanted to get rid of some of the land that they probably weren't going to be able to develop in the near future. They wanted to refine the existing master plan that they did have. And so they gave us a proposal on what that would look like. And the first step we did is we held a meeting with John Beneke with the Arkansas State Parks and Tourism. The reason we did this is because the City of Fayetteville has received 2 grants for the development of Lake Fayetteville Park from the Arkansas State Parks and Tourism, and it's an outdoor recreation grant. So part of the stipulation of that grant is that Lake Fayetteville Park in its entirety has to remain for outdoor recreation purposes in perpetuity. So we wanted to make sure that the new master plan that they were proposing abided by that those criteria. And so we met with John Beneke, who's the representative from the State Parks Board, or State Parks and Tourism. Went over the plan, and he basically told them, the requirements that they needed to meet, and that they needed to describe uses for their buildings. And I believe that that will be covered later when they give their presentation. We also developed a list of stakeholders at Lake Fayetteville. We wanted to run the proposed plan by the users of Lake Fayetteville Park. And so we had a meeting where we invited stakeholders who were members. We had a representative there from the ORC, the Ozark Off-Road Bikers, the Audubon Society, the Environmental Studies Center, who also holds a lease on the Lake Fayetteville property, Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association, the Fayetteville Watershed Association, and then we also received a letter from the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission from a game biologist there. Based on the feedback that we got from them, after the meeting, we met with Botanical Garden staff, and they asked the city for us to come up with a recommendation for the boundary. It was becoming clear that some of the issues that were raised in the stakeholder meeting had to do with where the boundary was and where the fee area would be, because for the Botanical Gardens to conduct business, they obviously had to charge a fee. And so there's an area of being able to control the fee area versus non-fee area. And the first proposed plan had the nature trail relocated to the south border, just south of the asphalt trail. And so that was one area of concern by many in the public. Another area of concern is that for there to be a fee area, there obviously has to be a barrier of some sort on the lease boundary. And so this boundary was causing problems with wildlife movement, was a concern, and also developing right up next to the lake shore. There was concern about just leaving a buffer there for the habitat. It was pointed out by some that the shallow area of the lake there is a popular spot for feeding of waterfowl, and moving the lease boundary right up against the water edge would disturb that. So the wildlife corridor, the habitat buffer, and the nature trail were the three biggest concerns that were brought up by the stakeholders. So Botanical Gardens asked us to come up with a recommendation on where we thought the boundary should be. So we went back as city staff and we looked at all of the criteria and the points that were made. We looked at the letter that the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission wrote us, and there was some starting to become consistencies with some of the recommendations that the groups were making. They all felt like there should be a setback from the lake that allowed wildlife movement. They felt like that the nature trail should stay in the same location where it is and not be relocated to the south side of the property. And so, as we looked through that, one of the other suggestions was that we conduct an environmental impact assessment on the area where we were suggesting relocating the trail. As we looked at the cost of that, and as we looked at how we handle trail projects with the permitting through the Corps, we opted not to do the assessment. It was the bids that we received were almost $5,000 for the assessment. And currently the existing trail, nature trail, is in a sensitive area. It is wet and muddy during seasonally. And so we knew that we were already in a sensitive area. And so we proposed that we could improve upon the existing trail by constructing it out of a boardwalk, get it up out of the mud, and be of a less impact to the environment. And so what we put together was a proposal where we shifted the north boundary of the lease south, and you can see it on the plan. It represents the dark shaded area is where we proposed that the lease boundary would be, which would accommodate a wildlife buffer. There's a minimum of 100 feet setback on the north border, so no area of the lease is closer than 100 feet to the lake. In some instances, it's 300 to 400 feet away, particularly when you start getting up around the shallow cove that was of a concern. And we proposed that the nature trail would not be within the lease boundary. It would be just to the north of the lease boundary. And that for the sensitive area by the wildlife area, the shallow cove, we would construct that section of the trail as a boardwalk. As you've seen here this evening, we've had 2 Eagle Scouts. We get Eagle Scouts requests all the time, and so our hope is to be able to construct a boardwalk using Eagle Scouts. We've had success with that, working with the ORC. On the north side of the lake, we've had 3 Eagle Scouts work on a boardwalk project there, and it was very successful. And so that's long-term, that's our plan. So we presented this to the Botanical Gardens. They had a few comments and suggestions, and we made a few changes. And so here today is what we have agreed upon with Botanical Gardens and city staff. Of note, areas that have changed a bit from our original proposal, I just want to point out. They're in the southeast corner. You'll see right there, you'll see a parking lot. The city staff has proposed to build this parking lot as a trailhead for trail users. One of the big issues that Botanical Gardens has is this is a city-built parking lot, but it's the only parking lot that Botanical Gardens has currently without using overflow parking. And there's a great number of trail users and Botanical Gardens patrons trying to use the same parking lot, and so we would benefit greatly with a parking lot just dedicated for trail use. So that's a new change. The other change is this area here is labeled as a non-fee area. When we gave our proposal, we had the lease stopping right here, but the Botanical Gardens requested that we include this area just kind of as a buffer, just to leave as a natural area, just so they could take students out and kind of do natural tours. This is a non-fee area, so any barriers or any fencing or whatever would not be included in this area here. The other change I mentioned, the trail, it will be located out of the Botanical Gardens lease area, so the trail would skirt right along the north boundary here, and then you can see this faded yellow line is where the existing trail is. So this section from here to here would be rebuilt and proposed to be a boardwalk. We would have to locate a bridge at this area over Hilton Creek. The Botanical Gardens utilizes this bridge and it would be within their fee area. And so we would have to construct a bridge as well. The other area that was mentioned on the initial proposal by Botanical Gardens included a bird blind, and there was a little walkway that came over to the bird blind. It was located here, and after quite a bit of discussion and how we were drawing the boundary, it was decided that the bird blind would not be in the Botanical Gardens lease area. As you recall, last month we had that presentation. So the bird blind is going to be constructed, but it will be on city, well, it's all city property, but it will not be within the Botanical Gardens lease boundary. Let's see. So I think those were the main changes. Just a few things to point out. The paved trail does bisect part of the Botanical Gardens lease, but then the future lease boundaries, the trail will be the southern border, the asphalt trail. The nature trail will be on the north side. So the only area of the trail that is within the lease is this area, and that's a statement in the lease, in the new lease language that accounts for that. So I'll let Botanical Gardens come up and they can go through the detail. I just wanted to give you a rundown of how we came up with the lease boundary, and then that's what they had to work with.
Hey, I might just give a few guidelines before we get started. First of all, when we do have public meetings, we would like Botanical Gardens to give a summary of their master plan and also about their lease agreement. And then our Parks Board will open it up to public comment. During the public comment, anyone's welcome to come up. We do ask you to state your name and be as brief as possible, because there's quite a few people, I think, that are here for this item. And any questions that you have are to be addressed to the Parks Board, not to anybody else. And if the Parks Board believes that either the city attorney, which is Kit Williams, he's with us here tonight, if he needs to address it, or if they would like Botanical Gardens or Parks and Recreation staff to address those questions, we would be happy to. But we'll only ask those questions to our Parks Board, and they'll decide if they need an answer on that, okay? we just want this to go smoothly, and we appreciate everybody for being here. Thank you for your interest.
Thank you. I'm Bill Schwab. I'm a member of the Botanical Garden Board. Our president can't be here this evening. He's in Little Rock, and he asked me to make the presentation for the board. Other members are going to speak. Linda McMath is going to talk about our educational mission and our programs. Our attorney, Robert Rhodes, is here tonight to talk specifically about the lease. And Ron Cox, our executive director, is here to answer specific questions about the operation of the garden. On behalf of the board, I am here today to request your approval of our master plan, as well as your approval of a new lease. The new master plan enables the garden to move into the next phases of its development. Our plan was approved unanimously by our board during our July 15th meeting, and it will reduce the garden's footprint from 96 acres to 40 acres. The tagline for the garden is Learn, Play, and Grow. And the master plan enables us to expand in three major areas. First of all, in our educational mission, which is to teach nature, sustainability, and nutrition education, we will be able to dramatically expand this mission. Let me give you some 2013 data. In 2013, 10,881 area school children visited the garden. This is up from 7,500 in 2011. Through a Walton grant, thousands of students and adults have been able to visit the garden and attend educational programs without charge. Almost 4,000 adults have attended classes and programs or attended classes and programs in the year 2013. And volunteers contributed more than 4,800 hours to maintain and to support operations, as well as to serve as docents. The new lease, as written, will allow all Fayetteville school children to attend the garden free. And all Fayetteville residents will be able to attend and enjoy the garden with free admissions prior to noon on Saturday. The garden also grows our local economy. There was a 2011 Chamber study that estimated the economic impact of the garden was $3.2 million. And the economy has improved, and the number of people attending and enjoying the garden has increased dramatically. And a figure I recently heard was our impact now is in the double digits. Last year we had 84,000 visitors. We're anticipating approximately 100,000 this year. Our education programs, our entertainment programs and rentals continue to grow. The garden's budget this year was $560,000, and we do not get a penny of city money. All that money comes from private gifts and membership and rentals and admissions and gift shop sales and fundraising. And our garden membership has grown to 1,230 people. And finally, I'm a sociologist. I'm an urban sociologist. And one thing that is wonderful about Fayetteville is that we have a sense of place made possible by that square, which I go to every Saturday. I usually go not to buy groceries, but rather to run into people, see people I normally don't. But the garden plays the same role. It provides a place where we can meet, where we can have weddings and memorial services and musical events and family-friendly events like our recent Firefly Fling, where 3,100 children and adults attended, and scheduled events like our greening of the garden, which raised $54,000 for garden operations, or next week our University of Arkansas's College of Education Health Professions is going to have its fall kickoff reception. And finally, nonprofits as well as businesses meet there for functions as well as meetings. So we are a garden that I think has served this community well. And our plan, which I'd like to review now, will enhance that role and improve the quality of life, not only for the people of Fayetteville, but for the entire Northwest Arkansas community. Master Plan 2028 is a 15-year multi-phase project that includes 8 new gardens, 3 parking lots, and 5 buildings and structures. The buildings include a visitor center, education building, and conservatory, which is 17,000 square feet, and here is a rendering of it. Education programs at the garden for children and adults will include topics such as plants, animals, insects, ecology, and the environment. Second building will be an event pavilion, 670 square feet. It's a multifunctional building to handle events and activities in support of the garden. The third building is a small structure of 2,000 square feet, which we call a way station, which will have restrooms as well as garden offices. We're also planning along 265 a community garden holding 7,800 square feet. 1,500 feet will be heated and cooled for restrooms and conference and meeting rooms. 6,300 feet will be open for things like farmers markets and flower shows and the like. And finally, we're planning an outdoor classroom of about 250 seats. New gardens would include one I'm really excited about right in front of the Education Center, a field of fork garden, the People's Garden, horticultural display garden, a woody plant garden, sustainability garden, Hilton Creek Garden, the Klingman Arboretum, which is already in the process of being created, and a woodland interpretive garden. So it is a well thought of, thought out master plan that I believe will serve the people of our city and our region very well. Linda Math would like to talk about our educational programs.
My name is Linda McMath. I'm a longtime member of the BGSO, Botanical Garden Society of the Ozarks, and I've been on the board for almost 6 years now. As co-chair of the Education Committee, I want to take this opportunity to share with you how the master plan supports the education mission of the BGO. Gerald Klingeman, the board's director of operations and a retired professor of horticulture at the U of A, has an informative article on our website on the history of botanical gardens. Gerald points out that in addition to being a repository for lots and lots of plants, it's also a place that provides communities with a place of beauty and peacefulness, a resource for discovery and academic research, and a center for community gatherings. At the BGO, you will see weddings, memorial services, garden parties, free concerts, and family-focused fun events like the Firefly Fling that was just mentioned. This event, which was created in collaboration with Crystal Bridges and the Amazium and Hobbs State Park, attracted 3,200 people on a cool night in July this summer. My own grandchildren and their parents attend this every year, and we have a blast. The Walker Foundation's support of many arts and entertainment activities at the garden makes events like these possible. During the holiday season, thanks to Ozark Electric and Bank of America, we host the Garden Land Express for kids and the young at heart who enjoy model trains and hot chocolate and barrel train rides. We have a Jingle Jog 5K race. It's a fun way to stay in shape and have fun on a cold winter day. These fun events, and many more like them at the Botanical Garden, bring our communities together and add to our enjoyment of the outdoors. But I'm here tonight to describe the educational programs of the BGO and how they relate to the master plan that you're seeing tonight. Our educational programs for children and adults include a wide range of topics including plants, animals, insects, ecology, nutrition, and the environment. Working with school systems throughout Northwest Arkansas, the Botanical Garden welcomed, as you just heard, 10,880 school children this past year. The BGO provides environmental education classes for the 3rd and 5th grade students from the Springdale school system and hosts the Fayetteville High School Green Team each year. Our Little Sprouts program, which invites preschoolers to the garden each week, has grown and grown from a few little ones and their moms and grandmas to over 90 children, and we are now requiring 2 sessions a day to accommodate that crowd. Thanks to the support from Tyson Foods and Cox Communications, we host events like Earth Day It's a huge event every spring. The garden is swarming with kids in their colorful T-shirts representing their schools, and they're accompanied by lots of teachers and parents trying to keep the groups together as they move from learning station to learning station. The parking lot is overflowing, and the field is full of yellow school buses. It's an amazing sight. The Butterfly Pavilion, designed by David McKee, is a magnet for visitors of all ages. Butterfly Days attracts hundreds of kids and adults. And the Arkansas native butterflies that visitors can observe are spectacular. Our summer continuing education classes for teachers provide classroom materials and qualify teachers for special certification in environmental education. Summer camps give students hands-on experiences in the garden and a lifetime of useful knowledge about growing food and flowers and trees. This summer's camp's focus was on pollinators. Lifelong learning is central to the mission of the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks. Our staff and volunteers hold workshops, lectures, and classes for people of all ages throughout the entire year. The master plan for the BGO is a 15-year, multi-phased project. As you know, the plan includes 8 new gardens, 3 parking lots, and 5 buildings. When we were beginning our planning, the board assessed our needs for expansion and development based on programs that the BGO was offering, and educational program needs jumped out at us. The large number of children and adults who come to us for classes, camps, meetings, and all sorts of gatherings already exceeds the capacity of our current facility and staff. To the planners, it became obvious that a building dedicated to education was needed to meet the increasing needs of the community. One that provided shelter from the elements, flexible classroom space, lab-type rooms for those messy and wet activities that take place in horticulture classrooms, restrooms, small and large gathering places, additional office space, bus parking, a place to eat lunch, and easy access to the outdoors. The list goes on, as you can well imagine. We visited Garvin Woodland Gardens in Hot Springs and the Powell Garden in Kansas City to see their education buildings and to learn things to include in our plan and things to avoid. We came away with a good sense of how a master plan could support the educational mission of our garden. As we worked with David McKee in designing an education building, the idea emerged that the focus of the project should be expanded to design a building that included a visitor center and gift shop, a conservatory to house and display plants year-round, indoor and outdoor classroom space, a demonstration kitchen that could be used with school groups as we implement the Field to Fork curriculum. This multi-purpose facility could also host adult gatherings. The Field to Fork Garden, one of 9 gardens included in the master plan, will be adjacent to the education building. It's right behind it, close to the lake, between the building and the lake, allowing students hands-on access to it. Students will plant, grow, harvest, cook, and eat food from the garden. Teaching today's students where food comes from and how to grow and prepare nutritious food is essential if we are to ensure a healthy future for our world. The master plan you see tonight supports the educational role of the garden. It also expands the cultural impact of the Botanical Garden on our vibrant Northwest Arkansas community. I speak for the board when I say we appreciate the support of the PARB and the citizens of Northwest Arkansas as we go forward with growing this garden. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Watson, other members of the board, my name is Robert Rhodes, and I am with the law firm of Hall Estel, and I have been tasked by the garden to negotiate a new lease, and with a lot of cooperation from Mr. Williams, and a lot of discussions with a lot of interest groups, we have negotiated a lease, And if I may,
Thank you.
the audience, it should be up there in a second. And I've gone through both leases, and this represents a comparison. It doesn't represent word for word everything in the lease, but it's some of the larger points. And so, knowing that you all can read, I'll be very quick. As you can see, the lease term in the new lease ends practically the same year, 2100. That would be the final end if all options were exercised. The prior was 2103. The original lease was about 96 acres. The new lease is 40 acres. Therefore, the city is getting back 56 acres of parkland. The trails, in the original lease, free public access in non-fee areas of the lease premises. And the trails under the new lease, unlimited free public access to hard and soft trails that go past and through the lease premises. Parking, free parking with free access for public trail users in the old lease. And then the same as far as the existing parking lot, that's already been discussed, and the new parking lot will also provide parking for trail, the folks that are wanting to use the trail. The master plan, which, by the way, the master plan is part of the lease, and it is incorporated in the lease, and so if you approve and if the city council approves and it gets signed off by the city, then that will be one document that will be in place until the parties agree to change it, or until perhaps, 2100. But the master plan is a guide for the garden's development, and then the master plan in the new lease is the same, but it's more detailed, and it goes through the year 2828, and it also has a detailed as-built as far as what has been developed here to date. Both leases have, as already mentioned, free admission for Fayetteville residents Saturday mornings, free access to Fayetteville school children. The governance, the original lease called for the city council to appoint a member of the garden's board. A second member is from this board. I believe Mr. Lamb, I think, might be that member. And then a third member is a member, staff member of the Parks and Recreation. That doesn't change. That's still the same. And then lastly, I've indicated that the garden is required to give an annual audited financial report to the city. That's still the same. Not in the lease, or not in this comparison at least, I guess I'd like to highlight just a couple of other things. And that is, and I think it's already been discussed, but I just want to hit it one more time, the plan of greater and more numerous educational opportunities for the youth of Northwest Arkansas as well as adults is going to be enhanced dramatically. Further, not mentioned in the lease, is that some of these other parking areas, thank you, Ms. Jumper. Some of these parking areas that are to be built here, as well as what's already in existence there, those will be able to be used by people that may not necessarily are going to the garden, but they want to use the trails as well as the restrooms. So that concludes our report, and with that, we'll sit down and entertain questions if you have them.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to, if there's any questions to the Parks Board for the Botanical Garden Group. Okay, we'd like to open up to public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to comment from the public?
I'm Garnet Wise. I'm a resident of Fayetteville and a member of the City of Fayetteville Environmental Action Committee. So I'm here representing myself, but also, I guess, the EAC somewhat. Real quickly, the EAC is appointed, by the City Council, I think like you guys are. We're charged with reviewing projects and things in an advisory role to the City Council. When this project came up, it kind of flagged as, something that might have some, potential environmental impacts, so that's why several of us got interested, and we've discussed it somewhat. We haven't heard the proposal until now, but I do want to say I love the Botanical Garden, and I use it. I love the Firefly Festival, and I ride the paved trails and the soft surface trails around Lake Fayetteville, and I like the plan, the bold visionary plan. I just have a few comments that I think the board should, consider. And some of these might be for you, Mr. Williams, but I'm not sure. One is, since it's city property, is an environmental site assessment a requirement for city projects? And just as a question, as I don't know that it is, but I know there are some cases where, public works type projects require environmental site assessment, so that's one question that came up. Another one is getting a jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers for a wetland-related project, specifically moving the trail, the soft surface trail. If the trail is moved closer to the wetland or anywhere from where it is in the wetland, I think that might trigger a Corps of Engineers permit. Building boardwalks or bridges potentially needs input of the Corps of Engineers, a jurisdictional determination and function and value evaluation. And so I think it'd be in the city's interest to check into that and make sure they're covered. And then I guess my final comment is just that, again, I like the bold vision, long term. I know it's going to take a while. There's going to be a lot of fundraising to be done. And I just feel that in a big project like this, there should also be some financial allowances included for the forced changes to the existing infrastructure. There's lots of plans for buildings and parking lots and learning trails, and that's all cool, but I think since the plan is going to force moving some of the existing infrastructure like soft surface trails, and it's going to force the building of boardwalks potentially and bridges, that should be part of some financial allowance should be included for that too. Because somebody's got to pay for it. And there's been a lot of work put into building and maintaining the trails that are there, and so I hate to push that off on somebody else. We hope there's a plan, to address that and do it compliant with environmental regulations and best practices for protecting the habitats, and the wildlife corridors that were discussed. And so there are some permitting issues potentially, and maybe some engineering that needs to be done above and beyond the work and labor that the Boy Scouts could provide, for example. There may be some engineering that needs to be done and permit work. So appreciate you, your consideration, and thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
As far as any issues, Byron, I mean, are these areas that a Corps of Engineer needs to be involved with as far as moving the soft trails?
Yeah, aside from the information we've already gathered from the stakeholders and the Arkansas Game and Fish, when we get ready to do the alignment of the boardwalk, we will contact the Corps and have them do a jurisdictional determination, see what areas they have jurisdiction over, and then what we need to do to meet those requirements that the Corps would have. So that's going to be part of the process. So yes, that's the standard whenever we're working in an area, a body of water that we believe the Corps may have jurisdiction over. We will ask for that determination.
Byron, what are the costs associated with this new lease on the Parks and Recreation Department? You had mentioned the cost of a new bridge cost of additional parking and the cost of moving the soft surface trail. What do those costs add up to the Parks and Recreation Department?
The cost of the parking lot, I believe, was in the CIP,
Yes, $190,000.
$190,000 for the new trailhead parking lot. The cost of the boardwalk has not been determined yet. Like I said, we're hoping to utilize Eagle Scout, and they have differing means, and some can supply all the materials, and some need help from the city, so we'll have to determine that. But we don't know the extent of that yet.
What about the cost of a new bridge?
That would be incorporated within the boardwalk and be constructed of the same type material.
And those costs would be borne by the Parks and Recreation Department?
Partially, yes.
I think when you're talking about costs involved in this, it really is a city council question about how to pay for it. The city council has shown a lot of commitment to the Botanical Gardens as well as to the trail system. We spent a lot of money. We built a beautiful bridge down by the dam. It was very costly, more costly than it had to be, but we wanted to have places for people to stay and be able to look over. And so the city council has shown a lot of commitment to Lake Fayetteville and to the Botanical Garden Society. About 10 years ago, we invested $750,000 in Botanical Garden Society to first build the first parking lot for them and sidewalk and help them finish their first building to help them fundraise. And since then, I think they've done very well with that. But that really is a city council question about whether or not there should be anything expected of the Botanical Garden Society. The administration's position so far, from what I understand, is no, that we're not going to try to put costs on the Botanical Garden Society to build that kind of infrastructure. That is going to be city infrastructure. We think it's going to be better environmentally to have a boardwalk there, have a new bridge. And this has been a long negotiation with Botanical Garden Society, a year and a half plus. And so anyway, at this point in time, I think that's really an issue that should be addressed to the city council as opposed to you all, because you all don't write the checks. And so, anyway, that's I think the position of the administration, and this is a question I do think is up to the city council to decide that. Certainly you can give us whatever input you want to recommend to the city council, but ultimately it's a city council decision.
And my question's about the bridge. How long are we going to be able to use that? Are the soft trail users going to be able to utilize that bridge until we close that and it becomes a fee area? Until the city can build a new bridge, or as soon as we pass this, you're going to go out and chain it up? What's it going to look like?
Well, I would say we need to get the other bridge completed.
Can I restate your question?
Please do.
Will the existing trail remain open until the new trail's done?
Yes.
I think that's the
There's no
question.
plans to close the trail.
Yeah.
We will relocate the trail when they're funding and they get ready to start with their development.
Are there any plans for public restrooms?
There has been discussion, but there are no plans.
And that is certainly something we benefited from the Botanical Gardens, because I was shocked when I was on city council and we funded our first public restroom at one ballpark, and I thought, that's what it costs to build a house. So I think that we've had a lot of benefit from them eventually, maybe not here, maybe another location at Lake Fayetteville. We might need to have more public bathrooms. Of course, there are access to Veterans Park and also to the other softball park where bathrooms are located, but that's always been an issue, and we're very appreciative that the Botanical Garden has allowed our trail users to use their bathrooms.
We also have 3 other bathrooms on our trails, and I know it's on the other side, but 3 bathrooms for 5.5 miles or 7 miles for the soft surface trail isn't too bad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is there any other public comment?
My name is William Mertens. I am a citizen of Fayetteville and want to visit with the PARB. First, thank you for having us here tonight. Not really sure where to begin. I think probably with the most obvious, the staff recommendation and the lease itself suggests that the proposed soft surface trail reroute is based on an agreement with the stakeholders. And I think that's a gross misstatement of what the stakeholders have had to say about this. Let's just be clear that there's a section of the trail that is being proposed to be moved. It is to be moved from what is a soggy wetland area into a deeper wetland area closer to the lake. That is what we're talking about doing with this section of the soft surface trail that's getting moved. It's not getting moved into the higher elevation as recommended by ORC and IMBA and the engineer. They've had a look at it, which is above the 1,240-foot elevation area. It is moving it closer to the lake. The ORC, which is the Ozark Off-Road Cyclists, they're the trail building group here in northwest Arkansas, has objected to moving the trail closer to the lake. The Environmental Study Center, and board members, if you would please look at your the BGSO stakeholder summary of recommendations that should be in your staff packet. A little chart that looks like, everyone else has this. Group, contact, wildlife corridor, that matrix, I don't know if you have that in your packet. I received it from Mr. Humphreys.
Nope. It's not.
That's not in our packet.
Okay. Well, while
It's been in there before.
Yeah, while
I've
the
seen it.
park staff has advised that and the lease reflects that there's some agreement with the stakeholders on the reroute of the trail. That's simply not true. Even in this the stakeholder summary, 4 of the primary groups, which is the Ozark Off-Road Cyclists, they're opposed to moving the trail closer to the lake. The Environmental Study Center, their comment is, "Do not move trail closer to lake." So how you get any more unequivocal than that? The FNHA, the Fayetteville National Historic Heritage Association, I always get that wrong. Bob Calk recommends keeping the wildlife corridor 250 feet from the 1,240-foot elevation. This trail reroute is all within that 1,240, all lower than 1,240. Fayetteville Watershed, Mr. Pennington, his recommendation was avoid moving the trail closer to the lake into the wetland. The Fayetteville Lake Fayetteville Watershed Partnership, I suspect the same organization, back in February said LFWP still is of the position that moving the trail west toward the lake shore and into the wetland is unnecessary and should be avoided. We've got rather unequivocal statements from the stakeholders to do exactly opposite of what's being proposed here and what's contained in that lease. And there's some I forget who it was who said that an environmental impact assessment was going to be $5,000 and it wasn't done. The city and you on the Parks Board we are the stewards of this natural resource. We shouldn't be doing just the bare minimum or getting away with whatever we can or asking for jurisdictional determinations from the Corps of Engineers to see how little we can do to get away with to still get this stuff done. We really ought to be looking forward and making sure that what we're doing around Lake Fayetteville or what we're allowing this public corporation to do is actually in the best interest of the lake and all future citizens who are going to be using it, and make sure that we protect the environment out there, not just the bare minimum that's required by the Corps, and certainly respect the experts on the ground, such as the Lake Fayetteville Watershed Partnership, when they say, don't move this trail. So I would ask the PARB to reject the lease and the master plan, at least for now, until we can get an environmental impact assessment or environmental impact study done. Figure out what actually is going to be the impact in this wetland area of moving the trail. I submit to you that the Corps of Engineers is not going to improve a Boy Scout bridge for construction in the wetlands area, And if the Corps, in fact, does bless that proposal, I'd like to see that in writing. I know Mr. Williams has suggested that the city council is the one who can address these financial issues. But right now, we have a working trail, and if the PARB is going to make a recommendation to approve a lease, it's going to have a financial impact on the city. I think it's reasonable for you to ascertain what that impact is going to be before you vote on that proposal. The other thing that was mentioned previously was the funding of this. The city of Fayetteville has spent $750,000 of taxpayer money on the construction of the parking lot and on the visitor center here, including the construction of those bathrooms. I would like to see something in the lease that requires that gets some return on that investment and keeps those bathrooms open for the public, not just for Fayetteville citizens and not just between 9 and noon on Saturday, but have some provision in the lease that actually requires that to maintain public access to the bathrooms. The other thing I'd say is there has been money spent in developing Lake Fayetteville Park that was received from the outdoor recreation grant. Part of that grant state funds, part of it's from the Department of Interior. At least that's my understanding of the source of that funds. Having reviewed the grant terms, that outdoor recreation grant has a set of terms that once you receive money, those terms are binding on the city in perpetuity. That means just forever. So that all future construction in that city park or in that park that's been improved by those funds has to be in compliance with those terms. The outdoor recreation grant does have a prohibition of walled structures other than concession stands and bathrooms. And I would ask that before the PARB makes a recommendation to approve this lease, that we get some clarification on whether or not the proposed structures there are actually going to trigger a default under these grants that would require the city to either pay a fine or forfeit land equal to the land that's been improved with these grant funds. John Beneke has opined that despite the language of the grant terms that walled structures are permissible. I would disagree with that unless someone can show some contrary regs that provide some clarification for what otherwise seems very clear, which is walled structures are prohibited. Everything must be an open-air construction other than concession stands and bathrooms. But Beneke says that you can have walled structures as long as they're always open to the public. This appears to not be open to the public other than on certain days and times that these structures are part of a fenced-in fee area that's going to be fenced off from the public and either available by membership to certain folks or those who want to pay at the gate. But I submit that the buildings proposed to be constructed are going to trigger a default under this outdoor recreation grant. So again, I'd say the PRB ought to be cautious and make sure that those conditions are actually met. Then I guess the other thing I would say is that this trail is used by a lot of folks. The city park is used by a lot of folks. We're talking about fencing off 40 acres of that land, denying public access to this. I would urge the PRB to be really cautious about doing that and making sure that the city gets something in return. This is an organization that doesn't pay any money under this lease. It doesn't pay any property taxes. There's very little HMR tax generated from this that I've seen. Before we take one of the best natural resources we have and wall off 40 acres to limit public access to it, I really want to make sure we're getting our money's worth in return, and I want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's environmentally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you.
I approach and hand you a copy of this if anyone hasn't seen it.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
Kid, would you like to address some of those legal issues, or?
Well, we've already, as he pointed out, have made contact with an authority who looked at this, and I'll let Connie, actually, who made the contact, discuss what advice they gave us, and then I might have further comments.
We have met with John Beneke, who is the current Arkansas Parks and Tourism Outdoor Recreation Grant Director, and his predecessor. We've worked on this, I think, for probably 6 years on it. So when they knew they were going to be doing a master plan, we knew that the grant was something that we needed to protect and make certain we abided by it. And I think we have. John Beneke seems to be, certain, his stated concern was the possibility that these types of facilities and sites can lend themselves to restricted public use or prohibited fee structure by the public. However, they can't always be open year-round. They realize that they can't be open 24/7. No one can afford to open recreational facilities for that long a period. So they do understand there are certain hours for facilities to be open, as they are with any gardens. I feel as though we feel comfortable with John Beneke from his statement and from National Park Service, but it's something we're always going to have communication with Botanical Gardens to always make certain that we are abiding by these guidelines, because we wouldn't want to have to replace this property with another piece of property. So.
Could somebody else come in and interpret it differently than what's been interpreted as of now, and that fall into?
Well, that certainly can always happen. You have attorneys always differing in their interpretation of things. So that certainly can happen. We did put some things in the lease to try to also address this, not only all the free access that's in there that's required as consideration for this lease, and has always been part of that lease that we've done, but also we have in here that fees shall be reasonable in line with similar services available in the tourism marketplace. So we have put particular protections for our citizens in this agreement. Some of that has always been in the agreement because we've always tried to protect our citizens in accessing this. But one thing that was brought up is that it was talked about Lake Fayetteville as one of our great natural resources, and it certainly is. But I think the Botanical Garden Society and the Botanical Garden has become one of our great resources also. And that's why the City Council did spend $750,000 to help them get moving, to help them get going. And this has been going on for 20 years now, almost. 17 years ago, the Parks Board was meeting, the City Council was meeting about whether there would ever even be a botanical garden. And for a long time, it was basically just a dream. And through hard work of many of the people here at the Botanical Garden Society and others, it has come to reality and improved and gotten better and more of an impact for our citizens and our city. And now they want to take the next step. And so I think that it is one of our natural gems also that we need to make sure that we foster and try to protect. I do want to thank Mr. Mertens and the other stakeholders that he spoke about. I will be honest and say when we had our first meeting with the Botanical Garden Society back in January of 2013, and we spoke about the need for the soft trail and that the soft trail should not be moved to where the hard trail is, and that would get it way away from the lake, so all the environmental concerns would be gone. When we said no, that the soft trail had been built with a lot of hard work and had a lot of usage, and there were many people that really liked it, that seemed to kind of almost fall on deaf ears initially. I don't think they realized the importance of the soft trail was until it came to you all, and you all had hearings, and you let all the stakeholders talk, and at that point, Botanical Garden Society representatives realized how important that soft trail was. And in any negotiation, you don't always get everything you want. That's what negotiation is about. I knew the soft trail location was the most difficult part of this issue because they didn't want it blocking them from the lake. They wanted to have access to the lake, and yet we wanted a wildlife corridor. We wanted the soft trail to continue on the inside, next to the lake, where people would like to be able to be right next to the lake. And so we had to look for a creative solution. And the creative solution, which tried to take into account everybody's needs, was the boardwalk, which would cost the city more money than a soft trail would, but also be much better environmentally than building a soft trail right onto the wetland. And so we did take into consideration of that. And so even though maybe we didn't meet what every one of the stakeholders groups wanted exactly, we tried to come up with something that would work for the Botanical Gardens as well as the stakeholders. And that's why we came up with this, what I thought was a good compromise, that Byron went out there and walked it with several of the stakeholders and tried to figure out where can we locate this to satisfy our stakeholders and also to satisfy the Botanical Gardens. And that's why we came up with the location that we came up with. I think we have done probably as good a job compromising as I think we could do. In fact, Robert Rhodes kept asking me, let's negotiate the lease. And I kept saying, till the soft trail is located, we got nothing to negotiate. And so finally, I got to thank Byron for his hard work on that, to get it located at a place that we felt would be environmentally sound, that would pass muster with the Corps of Engineers, and we'll certainly work with them, and would do what we needed to do, and at the same time not damage the Botanical Gardens' ability to grow their gardens facility and their facilities out there that will serve all of our citizens. So that's why we came up with that particular compromise. We felt it was a good compromise at the time. That was my understanding.
Mr. Williams, can I ask you a quick question about triggering a violation of the grant? What is that process? Who determines that we triggered a violation of the grant?
Well, I would think that the same individual that now says it's okay would be the one that would indicate that we have a problem there.
Okay.
And obviously, we would, if that ever came about, we would talk with them and we'd say, look, we relied upon your predecessor's opinions before we ever approved this. And we have safeguards for our citizens. We require the facilities to be open on Friday mornings for all Fayetteville citizens. And the reason we said Fayetteville citizens instead of everybody is because we're the city of Fayetteville. This is city of Fayetteville parkland, and our citizens needed some consideration for allowing them to have it. And so that's why it says Fayetteville citizens. I think they actually open it up probably to everybody Saturday mornings. I'm not sure, but they are required to do that for our Fayetteville citizens, and that's why we have said that. So it could happen in the future, no question about it. I think that because of this previous language and emails that we have from the predecessors, I think we would have a very good position to say, wait a minute, it's too late to do that now. And as everything, we would probably call upon our representatives and senators to say, hey, you need to support us. You need to support the Botanical Gardens. We're relying upon what your advisors and your administrators were saying. Don't punish us now.
Mm-hmm. So you feel very confident in that?
Yes, I do. I mean, you never know with the federal government. I will grant you that.
Sure.
But I think that they would be reasonable. I say there are other things on the horizon much more dangerous to us now on our wastewater sort of issues, much more expensive to fix if we come up with, if some of the bureaucracies that are looking at making some changes there would make the changes they have threatened, that would be a much more serious situation for us.
If that would happen, what they would ask us to do would be to come up with replacement property. We would have to come up with the 40-plus acres that are like acres, like recreation opportunities. That's what you have to do if you change. Even the easements for 265 to go in by Lake Fayetteville, we had to come up with replacement property to replace a ditch. And that's when we built the trail and got land on the south side of the lake. So that's basically what happens if you violate, we would have to replace it.
What would that cost, the city of Fayetteville?
To replace
40 acres? I mean, even an estimate?
They would have to approve the site, the location, and that it's like property. So, they allowed us to utilize, of course, if it's land adjoining the property that you already have, that's almost a yes, you can probably replace it with that. We were lucky, we received a donation for the land that we had to have for replacement for 265, and not only 265, but Highway 16, where Lake Sequoia is. They needed to widen that bridge and take some of our property, that was already in a grant boundary. The precious thing about, having your land in a grant boundary is the fact that it does protect it for outdoor recreation for perpetuity. And I think that's kind of what we're about. If we can't protect it, then we've got to find another piece that replaces it.
So we don't know what the cost, if we violated the lease or the grant, we don't have a cost of what replacing that 40 acres would cost the city of Fayetteville potentially?
It just would be where we'd find it out and who we could beg to donate that 40 acres. So, it just depends on how we would get it. Unless we go with our figure, the 40,000 per acre.
40,000 per acre?
For raw land, but it might not be raw land that we're finding. It has to be within the city of Fayetteville.
I would guess, we do have lots of lakefront. We have lakefront at Lake Sequoia, which some of it is not within the city limits because, as you know, that's our outer limits. But it is certainly feasible that the city could purchase and annex in some more property there around Lake Sequoia, which would not be right on the lake, obviously, because we own everything around the lake, but it might be something that would be comparable to them. My feeling, though, is that that's not going to happen. It's good to look for the worst-case scenario. That's what lawyers are always trained to do. I'm sure Robert has done that many times. And so that's what you're talking about. It's kind of impossible to know at this point in time exactly what would happen. Number one, I don't think it would happen. I think that we are acting in good faith. We have opinions from the people that we should have opinions from that this is okay. And so I do not think it will happen. If it does happen, then we would certainly do whatever is necessary that we would be required to do, and probably try to acquire more lakefront property somewhere.
So as of now, we don't know what our financial exposure is. We have $190,000 on the parking lot. We don't know what the boardwalk's going to cost us, and we don't know what the bridge is going to cost. And we also have this unknown of violating the grant, which, what is that?
We hope
$160,000, or is it $1.6 million?
We have no intentions to violate our grant. We hope to always work with Botanical Gardens so that we can meet all the regulations, or if they feel like some criteria is not being met for the grant, to have it in a boundary, then we would work with them to make it feasible. Someday, we don't know in 20 years what will happen. It might be that we choose to do so.
But Connie, as of right now, we have approval for this process.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. And we've had approval, not from one of the directors, but even the former director approved. We visited with them. They knew what we were doing, trying to work with us. They had suggestions to make it better, that they felt more comfortable with, and we have done that.
Now, Mr. Williams, with all due respect, I know you said that the accounting, the money is a city council question, but we're in dire need of more baseball fields and more facilities that provide us an ROI to our HMR. So if we're going to have to be into this accepting the lease and it's going to cost us $250,000, that $250,000 could very well be easily spent elsewhere where we can get a higher ROI on our HMR. Now, I don't know the impact of the HMR of the Botanical Gardens. I love the Botanical Gardens myself, but we do need to look at this as far as spending money wisely and producing facilities that are going to give us an option to be able to increase our HMR for the years to come. We are getting killed if you look at the facilities between Benton County and Fayetteville. We're losing a lot of events now that we're losing a lot of tourist dollars as it is. And we're having a hard time funding the facilities that we need at the regional park. So would this money that would go for the different lease, would that take away potential money that we would have for future facilities?
I don't know exactly how to answer that. You certainly can make recommendations as you please to the city council about that. I share your concern that we do need to develop the regional park as quickly as possible. There's always calls for money. There's a suggestion right now that we increase the Gully Park and spend over $1 million to do that. Well, that's big money.
970.
But here we are talking about $250,000 of just redoing the lease, of building a bridge, which we already have a bridge.
So I think it's good for you to give whatever advice you can, whether it be Gully Park or the Botanical Garden or the Regional Park, to the city councils. That this is an advisory board, and feel free to give the advice. And if you feel like, because there might be additional costs on this lease, that you can't recommend it, well, you don't have to recommend it. You can vote against it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a few comments.
Sure.
As was mentioned earlier, I do have the benefit of also being on the Botanical Gardens board, appointed by this committee earlier this year. And while I don't have a great history in dealing with the garden, I do have a long history of using the trails in that area. And I just want to point out to everybody in the room that this is not a one-sided ask by the Botanical Gardens. They are here asking to move approximately 300 feet. Is that right, Byron? Of the soft surface trail. 251 feet of the soft surface trail. And if you've been out there since we've been discussing this, that section is mowed. And it's easily walkable to anyone that wants to go out and see where this reroute is proposed. And the whole time you're on that trail, you can look, if you're heading south, you can look, 10 to 15 yards to your left and see the existing trail. And so that's the basis of what they're asking for. Now, what the city is getting in return and what the citizens are getting in return is the Botanical Garden giving up over half of the existing land area that they have leased right now. And most importantly, this section where the boundary is going from the water line back to a point where the trail is now, on at least the soft surface trail, is entirely outside of the leased area. So the city will now be able to maintain that trail, do whatever they need to do, and really there won't be any involvement with the garden because it'll be outside of their leased area. So my opinion is that this is a two-sided transaction. Both parties are getting what they need. With me sitting in this position today, my loyalty is to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and to the city. And I'm recommending that we accept the changes as proposed.
Okay. Well, one moment before I have a few more questions before we get to
That
your
wasn't a
recommendation.
motion, just yet.
Oh, okay.
That was just my opinion.
Well, one of the other points that William brought up was the environmental impact study. I think you mentioned $5,000. Is it right to have that done? Right. Now, if I remember correctly, we walked the trails when this all began, and there was a gentleman there who worked there and kind of gave his input on these things and mentioned areas of 150 feet to 300 feet, and that there's constant give and take in these areas along those lines. I know that we've been, Byron, I think you were there, and we were kind of going through all these things, and just kind of, as we're walking the trail, we're sort of finding what would work, what wouldn't work. We took his opinions. We did mention possibly having that done officially, just so we could answer the questions like these things had been put up, but we didn't. We talked about maybe putting a bid in for that, but it just seemed like it kind of...
Right. We actually had 4 landscape architects and 4 engineers, at least 4 of each, that walked us with us, walked the grounds with us. Some of those were members of city engineering department, development services. That's the place you have to go through and get permission to do things. We had, at that point in time, Sarah Reed was with us. We had several people that had built trails. In fact, we actually had 5 landscape architects, because I forgot Matt Mihailovich. So you know, I think we had a lot of knowledge there that could make a good decision on it. And yes, the Corps of Engineers, by all means, we will go by their guidelines. But the city planning division, you know, they've helped us to cover the items that we need to, and they feel comfortable with us proceeding in this manner.
Well, I guess what my big concern is, you know, by approving this agreement and then making a contractual barrier that we are confined to, and then we go to the Corps of Engineers and say, hey, this is what we want to do, and they go, no, you can't do that. I mean, what happens at that point? Do we not have the trail?
We might refer that back to Allison Jumper, our planning superintendent. She could probably best answer.
You have to come to the podium, Allison.
Oh, okay.
With lots of, construction permitting processes, just because a trail is going through a wetland doesn't mean that it's a no-touch. There are different steps and different processes for mitigation of wetlands. So that sort of thing is permitted by the Corps under certain circumstances. So, we feel comfortable that a boardwalk is going to actually improve the situation that we have now. Right now, you're going right through the middle of a really muddy, wet, rooty area. We're talking about elevating this. We're not talking about just moving a surface trail towards the lake.
Now, your interactions with the Corps of Engineers, do you feel like this would be something that they would favor as opposed to leaving the trail the way that it is? By raising it up onto a boardwalk?
I would think so, yes. I haven't asked them that question yet, but as mentioned earlier several times, that is the process that we would go through.
Mr. Chair, I can also say sometimes, the city builds roads through marshy areas. For example, our extension of Van Ash Drive, if you know where that is going into the mall, goes through some really marshy areas, and we will be disturbing some wetlands doing that. And so when that happens, instead of the Corps saying, well, you can't do that because you're messing up wetlands, instead you have to mitigate. And we have banked wetlands. For example, when we built the new wastewater plant, we built wetlands around it. It became a very nice wetland prairie. And we are allowed now by the Corps of Engineers to use some of the credits we derived from that if we do need mitigation. So if the Corps says we have to mitigate or we cannot build the boardwalk, well, we have a substantial number of credits to mitigate. Now, I kind of agree with Allison. I don't think that'll happen. But if it does happen, we can do that and we'll still have the trail.
One other thing, if I could just add, we often look at these types of projects as educational tools. And so instead of, simply removing people from these types of areas, sometimes there is a benefit to bring people to these areas if it's done sensitively. So you can expose people to nature and sensitive areas and teach them about them.
So, I guess basically what my question is, and it's kind of a vague question, the fact that we're going and changing the contractual agreement with the Botanical Garden, and do you foresee this as being an insurmountable problem, that dealing with the Corps of Engineers or an environmental impact or anything like that? Do you think this is something that we're going to be able to manage our way around through credits or wetland credits or whatever to continue on in the project ideas that we have?
Sure, yeah, I think we can.
Okay. Do you see any issues with it? Okay. That's kind of where I was going. I know we can't answer every question of every issue that could possibly come up by renegotiating these contracts, but just in general, if everyone feels like this is something that's not going to just put an end to the soft trail, that answers my questions. Is there any other comments?
I've got a question. These future improvements are going to require a lot of removing trees in the forest area. Are there any plans to reuse some of this timber, possibly by the Botanical Garden buying like a portable mill to where these trees could be milled and used for projects to be used in the park? I know that's obviously how a lot of trees of issue went into the first building of the Botanical Garden. And the other question is, where would they fall with the, with tree restoration, with this? Because I see a lot of, canopy being, I know it's Botanical Garden, I know it'll be replaced with other plantings. Some people say, oh, but these aren't native species. Well, that's the idea of bringing new species into the area, but I was wondering what consideration was given for that, or if there would be any, that they would need to, pay to a tree fund for removal of these trees.
Well, they'd have to comply with the tree ordinance, the Tree Preservation and Protection Ordinance, just like any other developer. Now, when it comes to using the wood or whatever, I'm gonna defer that to the Botanical Gardens and see if they have any plans or thoughts about that.
Thank you.
Most of the building sites are in a prairie, and so there's not going to be a lot of lumber loss, but whatever lumber there is, and creating some sort of milling, sounds like something interesting to look into, without a doubt. Be mindful that the garden is all about that sort of notion, and I think, in the last few years, I think they've planted 300 trees to maintain and to further that canopy.
Is there any more public comment? Yes.
Hi, my name's Phil Penny. I'm a professional environmental scientist. One of the things I think about when I look at this project is I think it would be good for the city to understand exactly what kind of impact is going to be had in this area. And I think that getting environmental impact assessment before you make a decision would be a wise choice. Because if you do get into a situation where you can't do some of the activities you'd like to do, it could be ruin the plan. I appreciate it.
Hey everybody, my name's Steve Schneider. Thanks for having me. I'm going to sound like a broken record, okay, because of all the comments that have been made. But first of all, this is a city park, okay? It's used for recreation. I love the Botanical Garden. My wife's donated plants to the Botanical Garden. I love walking by, riding my bike by. It's awesome. I appreciate their vision for education. That's great. I totally appreciate that. But it's still a city park for recreation. The city just received 550 mountain bikes from the Walton Family Foundation to use on those trails. My questions are pretty short and brief. I have three questions or three comments. Number one, is that trail going to stay open regardless of the master plan, regardless of environmental impact studies and all this stuff we've been talking about? I would like to see the trail stay open forever until the new boardwalk's built, the new bridge is built. It's obvious to me that the bridge is going to be substantial right here. This bridge is going to be, I don't think you could build a bridge, a Boy Scout bridge, nothing against the boardwalk. The Boy Scouts, they do awesome work. I've done work with them for years, but that's about a 60-foot span. And I don't know what the bridge costs at Copperhead Creek, but it was a lot of money. I'd say probably $150,000, $200,000. So my point is, why should we burden the taxpayers for a new bridge and a boardwalk that could cost $100,000, $200,000? We don't know. So why can't we table this till we find out about this environmental impact study, about the expense of the boardwalk and the bridge? And my third comment is, the Botanical's master plan is awesome. I love it. But I don't think that they should be excluded from helping with the financial cost of rerouting this trail or putting in a boardwalk or bridge. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, I've been in many talks with them during all the stakeholder meetings, and they want to raise $20 to $40 million, which is awesome. But why can't they throw in $100,000 and help the city and the taxpayers with that burden? That's all I have to say. Thanks.
My name's Blair Johansson. I'm a resident of Fayetteville. Been a resident since '69. I was part of the Botanical Garden Board back when the decision was made by the City Council to invest $750,000 into this project, which then opened the door for private funding and the millions of dollars that has brought us to where we are today. It's just kind of interesting to me that the biking community has stepped forward now that the garden property is starting to reach out to that part of the property. They weren't necessarily concerned about it back in 2003. I do think that some efforts have been made to help both parties reach this point of view. I think that the comments that are being made about the studies are a delay tactic. Yes, I think it's important that if you're going into a project, you understand what you're going into, but I think we have quite a few professionals with the city that have stepped up to make those evaluations and make those determinations, and it's time for a decision to support the project so that the Botanical Garden can go forward with additional fundraising, because while this delay has been happening, and while the negotiations have been going on, they've lost several opportunities for private funding to come in and support the garden for an unknown endpoint on the lease agreement. We're at a point where we've reached a compromise and the lease agreement is ready to go forward and the investors are ready to invest in this project, which then helps the city partner with a public organization to help an end result that's better than where we are today. So I think it's time for us to support this project and move forward. Thank you.
Is there any reason why the BGSO has not preceded all this with an environmental impact in any type of study? I mean, we've seen, we're talking about the city taking on the $5,000 to do an environmental impact just for the trail system, but, I mean, have y'all considered putting forth that to incorporate the trail system and this entire project and the mitigation that is going to be required, and whether it's going to be realistic to even put some of this where you plan?
Well, certainly, I think a suggestion came out of this board about an environmental impact study, and so certainly the Botanical Garden Board considered it and talked with the city folks, and what you've already heard today is that was sort of our consideration as well. If it's something that is mandated, that we have to have, then certainly, and if it was a responsibility of the garden, then we would want to do that. The trail and where it's going to be moved and how it's going to be formed is the city's responsibility, and we certainly want to make sure that we're a good neighbor, but that's really probably more of the city's purview than it is ours.
Right, but we're still looking at an extensive amount of infrastructure. We're talking about 6,000 square foot education, multiple different aspects. I'm saying the entire project. Have y'all? I mean, we've been waiting on this now for a year and a half. Is there any reason why y'all haven't stepped forward to go ahead and do a complete impact of what y'all are offering up as far as this plan prior to presenting this plan? I mean, is there any reason why y'all are holding out on moving forward with something in that regard? Because it may change y'all's entire scope of what you are capable of doing.
I don't think it's a matter of holding out. I think it's a matter of our experts have not advised us that we need an environmental impact study for the work that you see before you.
I think you all need to keep in mind that there's an existing lease that we've already leased for 75 years or so to the Botanical Garden Society, and with their plans to do a master plan and development of that, their master plan in the past showed buildings and all kinds of things like that on it. It was not nearly as detailed as you see now. We've not seen any of those pretty renderings that you see right now in front of you. But that has been a contract, a lease agreement we've had with them since 1997, that they've been planning to develop a botanical garden here with buildings. In fact, the city helped them finish their first building with $500,000 grant. If they're going to build a building on wetland, which I hope they will not, and I don't think that they will, but if they do, then they will have to comply with whatever requirements that would necessitate at that time. You have some artist renderings, but I don't think that's enough to do a real assessment at this point in time, because obviously they haven't done all the soil testing and everything else and know exactly what the footprint is. So I think it's really premature to say, why don't you do an assessment right now, when it's just too ambiguous about what's going to happen. The only other thing I'd say is that I would recommend that you not table this. You are an advisory committee, which means you don't have to make the final decision. You don't make the final decision, you just make a recommendation. And so you don't, you can recommend anything you want to the city council on this, but I think that this has been in the works a long time, many meetings. You've had several meetings with this yourself, and I appreciate that. In fact, we went from ground zero, where we started with Botanical Garden Society, all the way to something I think is something I could recommend to the city council because of your input, because of the inputs of our bikers who use this all the time. Without that help, we would still be at ground zero, in my opinion. So I do want to thank you for your work, and I want to thank the people that have spoken for this, but one thing I would hope that you do not do is simply table this, and if you think more needs to be done before the city council makes a decision, then put that in your recommendation.
Thank you, Kid. Aubrey, did you have a comment?
Yes, I'm Aubrey Shepherd, thank you. Everybody in town by now must have heard me talk about wetlands. And I grew up in North Louisiana and hunted and fished all over Arkansas as well as Louisiana. And there you go. Thank you. Anyway, I've had a lifetime, almost 74 years coming Halloween, mostly in wetland. And I recognize it, whether it's a prairie in Arkansas or Kansas, or it's a cypress swamp, whatever. And I know its value. And every bit of it's precious. Many administrations, national and otherwise, said no net loss of wetland. Well, you can spend millions of dollars and recreate some wetland, but you may be destroying some other habitat in the process. That means Woolsey had to flood some seasonal wet prairie that was not, doesn't hold water all the time in order to qualify as new wetland. So, the considerations that it's not, it's the creatures that live there, it's the plants. Somebody said that a while ago, well, we walked through that area and it was mowed, and there was a big flag. It's a wetland area. We hear that. We all know just about where they're talking about going. And we know it's a floodplain. It's a wetland area. And you mow it once in the winter if you're talking about wet prairie, trying to keep the native plants growing. You don't touch it in the summertime or the spring or the fall. So if it's been mowed, you can call a Corps guy and he'll go out there and walk around right now and say, well, there's none of the wetland plants. That's one of the things we go by. But if it had been left unmowed, then everybody could see it's wetland. But anyhow, I don't know what the cost will be. All that's beside the point. Wetland's precious. It should be the most expensive land. There shouldn't be people buying and dredging and filling land for any kind of construction, and particularly not something that might be a polluting factory or farm or anything else. It is precious because it helps to clean water wherever it's going. This water we're talking about goes to the Illinois River and then to the Lake Tenkiller and few some other places. It gets all the way to the all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So everything we do to preserve wetland with the natural vegetation and all the creatures that live on it is a benefit to the worldwide environment. And by the way, if you see the experience of people in Fayetteville, where wetlands been destroyed upstream, trees destroyed, wetland filled with concrete, flooding gets higher. We're not talking about just water quality, but we're talking about flooding. Some of this stuff being planned to be built, if it really is things put in that low in the upper end of Lake Fayetteville, there'll be, the Planning Commission here will be authorizing, no doubt, next week from tonight, they'll probably authorize something to be built new that will affect the height and flow of water, the speed of flow of water down some stream. And Springdale will be doing, probably approving something that will increase the flow into Lake Fayetteville, down their stream system. So there's no way that you can just write off wetlands and say, we'll mitigate it. Mitigation doesn't really, that's a fake term when you come to things like this. We're going to cut off your leg, but we'll give you a leg to replace it. Well, that doesn't mitigate the loss. It doesn't minimize it. It's still significant. So I'm asking you to think about this and keep away from every water carrying water course, every lake, and every swampy place. And I don't like it when the highway department does it. I don't like it when the city does it for some other excuse. But some of those things, you know, may be more essential than having what they're trying to do in that particular place on there. And yes, I love going to the Botanical Garden also. But people interested in Botanical Garden should care about protecting the watershed for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey.
My name is Ron Troutman. I'm with Boulder Construction. And actually, I wanted to address your question, Mr. Watson.
Mm-hmm.
We have built about 20 miles of the Razorback Greenway Trail currently.
Mm-hmm.
We work with the Corps of Engineers every year, multiple times. In fact, my company acquired the original Corps of Engineers permit where the bridge is currently located, and we built that bridge. But your question directly, when you are going through or attempting to go through a wetlands or an environmentally sensitive area, the Corps of Engineers typically ask you to elevate the trail. I never thought we would agree on anything, Allison, but we do. And so the fact is, I'm not really quite sure why we're having, it seems to me, kind of a crazy argument here. We're recommending to put 261 feet back to nature to allow it to flow back to the lake. We're actually increasing the desires of the Corps of Engineers, which is elevating the trail. We're going to hover above. It's going back to nature. This plan is helping nature. So I just want to put that out there because we have worked through mitigation areas multiple times. And recently, the mitigation that was required by the Corps of Engineers was, as Connie said, nothing more than an information kiosk identifying some of the wildlife and the vegetation in those areas, and that was it. So we're actually helping the environment with this plan.
Thank you.
Let me say something on that hasn't been mentioned and emphasized enough. I was just thinking about Memorial Day. I had 9 kids at my cabin, which I don't recommend if you want a peaceful weekend. But of these 9 kids, there were, I guess, 8 of them were brothers and friends and guys. And there's one girl there that was that stood out from her brothers. And the reason she stood out is we're walking around and I'm talking about plants and things, which is what I do when I walk in the woods with these kids. And she had just come back from the Ozark Natural Science Center, and that impacted her tremendously. And the educational opportunities that we're looking at expanding with this, that's huge. And you don't know that until you get a group of kids, and one that happened to go to the Ozark Natural Science Center, and the others were more interested in just throwing rocks at things. And it made a big impact, and these kids remember these things. And it's tremendous the outreach that's being done with the kids and learning how butterflies operate and move around, and what plants they like, things like this. And this is, we are giving up some things by this, I understand, but also we're gaining more, as Ron just mentioned, more short. But this is a facility that's going to help educate kids, and that's huge, and that's what makes our world a better world, the better educated our children are. And that's a lot of their focus and their attention, and there's a tremendous reward to our community. And I know we all feel very passionate about these trails. I know I do. We've all lost some skin out there one time or another, but I think it's a good compromise, and I think we ought to accept this and move on. I make a motion we accept this plan.
Second.
Keep in mind, too, the tremendous gains that we're making with Mount Kessler, which is, I know it's not wetlands like this, but...
That's not a beginning trail system.
Hmm?
I said that's not a beginning trail system.
Yeah, but I think we're doing a good job in Fayetteville.
And before we, and I agree, and this is not an easy thing. I mean, you want it to be done perfect, and things are never done perfect. You know, and hindsight is always 20/20. The wetland area, you know, to me is obviously the biggest concern here. The land that's just north of the big building that's in the expansion area. If I had the pointer, I'd show you, but if you wouldn't mind, Robert. Thank you so much. If I remember correctly, when we walked the previous time before, when we got to this area right here, there was a concern that the trail was really kind of almost in the wetland area, and there was, I believe Phil made the recommendation that it should go curve right through here, just right in front of that building there, and go and continue on to the bridge. Moving things back further this way is pushing it back into the wetland. To me, that is the issue. Everything else looks great on this. The majority of the trail back here is pulled back away from the wetland area. This area right here seems to be the area of the biggest concern, having the major water flow through there, and this is kind of the big wetland area that's the big concern. You know,
It's larger than that, though.
Do I?
I think it's larger than that.
Well, I know, but I mean, just in general, the compromise, everything, the trails here, everything's been moved back all the way here. This one, it's actually gone back in the other direction. My recommendation would be have the environmental impact study done prior to the city council, just so they can have their facts straight and make the appropriate recommendation.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. We'll need to go ahead and vote on that motion and second, if I'm not mistaken.
An amendment to the motion is always in order. If you would like to amend the motion by adding something to the motion, then you certainly are able to do that if you receive a second.
And that's kind of where I was going as far as that goes. So do we vote for an amendment to the motion? Is that what we do?
You have to do the amendment first. Once the motion is voted on, then that is it. So if you would like to amend the motion in any way, then...
After the vote? Is that the appropriate?
No, you have to do the amendment, vote on the amendment before you ever get to the final vote.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to amend the motion, or add an amendment to the motion that the environmental impact study be done prior to being presented to City Council. Second,
Can we
have a
talk
roll?
about that then some?
Absolutely.
I think the idea of the environmental study is a good idea. Could that hamstring the project? Could that come back and say, hey, you need to move your trails? That's, do we have a concern that's going to
the way that I understand it,
in some way?
The way that I understand it when we went and we talked with the individuals is the recommendations, there's a constant give and take as far as these barriers and buffers are concerned. I just kind of want everybody to be aware of the ideal border and where the compromise is and where the big issues are. And the way it was explained to me is there's kind of that happy medium that's kind of right in the middle. And I just want to make sure that we kind of stay as close to that happy medium as we can. And without that study, I don't know if the trail, if it could be perfectly fine where it is. But I just kind of I'm more in favor of an educated decision being made as far as that goes.
And I would comment on that because I think everybody has done the due diligence, not only from the city staff perspective, but from all the experts that we've had come in and talk about where that trail needs to be. And so if we are talking about it going into a more wetland type situation, then the boardwalk, as Ron has explained, is an acceptable adjustment for that. And so my personal opinion is that we've made all the attempts and the good efforts to do that without that study, because my concern is that if we're going to do a study on 121 feet, is that what it was? 251 feet, well then we'll need to do an environmental study on the entire soft trail around the entire lake. I don't think that we can say that we take this little small piece of the trail and do an environmental study on that one piece without looking at the rest of the trail.
I believe $5,000 was for the entire shoreline,
It was,
if I remember correctly.
I think,
It was the entire area that's on the
You're
Botanical
talking about
Garden.
all 7 miles of the trail?
I'm talking about all 7 miles of the trails. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Because I don't think that you can purposely pick out part of that and say, let's do an environmental impact on that little short piece without saying, let's take a look at all the trails around Lake Fayetteville and see what kind of impact they're going to have around.
yeah,
And so,
that price was just on this section that we're looking at.
just for that section.
Yeah.
And everything else, the other trail has already been built, so there'd be no changes to the other trails, so it's a little bit late to do a site assessment on that. However, I would, if you're, I haven't heard a second to the motion, to
second it.
amend.
Amendment.
I second.
Okay, let me ask you, to change your motion somewhat, that the environmental site assessment be done before the city council votes rather than before submission to the city council. This is an advisory board, and if you put that other condition on it, then the city council might think they couldn't even look at this.
Mhm.
So if you would accept that as a friendly amendment, that the environmental site assessment be done prior to city council decision, I think that would be probably more proper for this board to do.
Okay. I would make that amendment.
So another thought, if we're going to do an environmental study on this small section of trail, how is that going to impact any of our other trails in the city that we're wanting to add or move as far as...
Just on this master plan, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, we're going to have other trails that are going to be impacted by either moving or updating in the rest of the city too as well. And so how are we going to address that going forward?
I think each situation is a case-by-case determination by the city staff primarily. Sometimes you could make recommendations. Occasionally it might go to the city, most likely not. I mean, city council, it would be mainly done by the staff anyway. But I would say it's always going to be a case-by-case determination, and you're not putting anything in stone by making this recommendation to the city council, if that's what this board wants to do.
Oh, we're not about to handcuff ourselves. And every time somebody runs over a dandelion, we've got to get an environmental impact study done. Are we?
I would hope not, and you have heard from experts here about whether or not something like that would really need to be done, or whether building a boardwalk is actually beneficial. Keep in mind, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, this land is currently in the Botanical Garden control. We are removing it. We are going to elevate the trail. It's going to go back much more into nature as it is right now. So even though it is got an increased cost, I will certainly grant that. From an environmental point of view, I really wonder about how much that is necessary, but you can certainly make whatever recommendation you want to the city council.
My recollection of our meeting when we spoke about the environmental study was that it could result in a determination that it's a wet area. We already know that. It could also result in that they recommend we get a jurisdictional determination from the Corps of Engineers. We already know we need to do that. My position is that through our staff and through the processes they're going to go through in order to get that permitted, we're going to get the same information.
In reality, we're not just talking about the 250 feet that is being moved, because the current trail system, that 6/10 of a mile that is in the botanical lease is virtually all of that is in a wetland. I mean, it's too low below the grade, and is virtually all in that wetland area that we're talking about. So it's not just 250 feet, it's almost 6/10 of a mile.
Well, I think the whole trail system around the lake is. I mean, there's a reason there's a lake there. There's a water system. And we've rerouted trail. I've been riding that trail on a weekly basis since the year 2003. And I can't remember any section that hasn't been rerouted in some way. It's all been improved, in my opinion, greatly improved, because we have real cyclists and trail users actually volunteering and working on the trail. But we didn't do an assessment on that. And I really feel like there's two outcomes that could potentially come from that environmental study, and it's those two things I mentioned. It's a wet area, and you need to get a jurisdictional determination, and we already know those things. If there was a question of whether it was a wet area or not, then it'd be a different story.
Well, we know it's a wet area, and where should the trail be located?
Yeah. Can we take any public comments at this point? We've got a gentleman in the back with his hand up. Can we do that in the middle of a motion, or do we not?
Not really.
I'm going to defer to your chairman to determine what the proper procedure
Sure.
is. I don't see you all very often.
Come on up, Steve.
Yeah.
Good.
So, an amendment has been suggested and seconded. I say we vote on that amendment as to whether to...
Do you want to get her to read
Oh,
it?
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say a few things. So we're proposing a boardwalk 251 feet. Is this soft surface? I mean, what's the whole term soft surface mean? I'm just a little confused.
I think it means soft surface where you can have soft surface environmentally, and if you can't have a soft surface environmentally there, then you have to build a boardwalk.
Okay,
some
so
other
there's
way.
a stipulation on that. I mean, I'm a trail user, big cycling advocate, promoting a healthy lifestyle, and also about educating next generations of flora, fauna, wetlands. But it seems to me that we're trying to come to this compromise. It seems like building a highway over it, or raising up and building a boardwalk doesn't make that a natural ecosystem. So that's just, I think we should look at maybe amending. That's just, and the whole talking about the 550 bicycles that were donated by the Walton Family Foundation. I mean, there's a whole new lifestyle that's coming apart in Northwest Arkansas. I mean, things are changing. We need more places to, like Bentonville has 4 trail systems, and I'm grateful that we're going to be developing the new city park and Kessler and whatnot. But we got other neighborhoods that need places to safe places to bike on trails, and I just think maybe we can come to a compromise where we can pull the trail back a little bit and keep it on the 1,240 feet elevation. So I know we can't have everything. I mean, we're gonna, we get one area, we lose another, but it seems like we need further impact studies
to, assess to make sure this habitat can, handle all these impacts from, an economic standpoint to, just, runoff in the lake, waterfowl, and just, I believe we need further impact studies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, since we opened it up, before I make my decision, I just have one question for the BGO. Is it okay to ask? Sure. Why are we moving? We've already determined it's only 251 feet. He's been out and walked it. He can see the other trail. Can you just remind me why we're moving the trail such a short distance to accommodate exactly what that the Botanical Gardens hopes to accommodate or accomplish?
My name is Ron Cox, and I'm the director of the Botanical Garden. And there could be a number of reasons, I think, that could be cited for movement, but I think the primary thing would be that the current concrete bridge that has been under discussion would be incorporated into the Botanical Gardens fee area. That bridge is a part of the Botanical Garden. It was built by the garden. In fact, Ron Troutman constructed it. If you incorporate that bridge into the Botanical Gardens fee area, the trail must cross the creek at another location. It's logical. So that's the number one thing. Now, I could also cite the fact that at the base of the field, that area is the most fertile ground at the Botanical Garden, and that's where we plan to have the Field to Fork Garden. It is the we are only talking a little bit of difference here, but I think the main reason, again, is because the rerouting or the change has to do with the use and the incorporation of that bridge. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
And I'd like to just make one point real quick. The environmental study, impact study, is not so much about drainage or effect on the wetlands. The big concern that I have that when we talked and we walked that trail is there's a normal barrier between the water line and between, I'm sure, a barrier that the Botanical Garden is going to put along their leased property line. That if you're going down that corridor and there's a deer that wants to go in the opposite direction, there has to be a certain amount of property or land for that deer to go around you in a safe manner. And if there's a deer on a long, narrow way that starts walking that way, a buck or something, or whatever, and there's people on the other side of it, and there's people, and it gets stuck in between, there's no place for it to go. It could be a dangerous situation. That's my big concern, is that there's enough room for wildlife, if it does come to that situation, where the trail and the wildlife can go by without there being any incident. That is the big concern on my mind. I'm sorry, Robert, did you have something to say? No. Okay.
Call for the vote.
Everybody ready for vote on the amendment?
Vote on the amendment?
This is amendment.
Voting on the amendment.
The amendment to have the
to the
environmental
motion.
impact.
Yeah, let's have the amendment restated if we could, if it's possible.
It would be to require an environmental site assessment be done before the city council votes on the lease.
Okay. Yes. Can you take roll, Melanie?
Watson?
Yes.
East?
Yes.
Hall?
No.
Maxwell?
Yes.
Lamb?
No.
Caldwell?
No.
No.
Lawson? McKnight?
No.
Profit?
So So the amendment failed, so you're back to the original motion at this point in time to, to recommend approval of the lease to the city council.
Yes.
Can I take roll, please?
Well,
now?
I make a motion to add an amendment to have a clear accounting of what the cost to City of Fayetteville is for the restructuring of the lease.
Is there a second?
I will say the city council certainly will get minutes of this meeting, and so I think that probably they'll understand your concerns at
All
the
right.
city council.
Thank you.
Melanie, if you want to take roll?
Watson,
No.
Reese,
No.
Hall,
Yes.
Maxwell,
No.
Lamb,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Prophet.
Okay, the motion did pass. Thank you for your hard work on this.
Thank you. And thanks for all the public input on that as well. Next up, I believe this is where we're inserting the two additional sections. First, we're going to have IMBA.
You want to pass it on, Missy?
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Lenny's always...
Yes.
You know where that bird line was being done?
Can you stand up okay?
Quick then. The bird line.
Uh,
The bird line. It's right off that end, isn't it?
yeah.
Can I use the hammer?
Yeah.
I know. It's-
Order.
I mean, I'm just canceling it.
You think they'd stick around? For a minute?
Emba.
Steve.
Steve Schneider.
Steve.
Oh, he's got him.
Take him in.
I brought my own. It's in the mailbox today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't get mine.
Is that you here on the front cover?
Upper Buffalo Trails.
Mhm.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's all.
I cleared the room, man. It's off. Hey, I'm Steve Schneider again. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Regional Director for International Mountain Bike Association based out of Bentonville, Arkansas. My region covers Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, East Texas, and Wichita. So, I want to talk a little bit about Trail Solutions Trail Building School, but I want to delve into the Ride Center status first, because Mr. McKnight had some questions last month, and some others as well. So you've all got this pamphlet in front of you. This was released this weekend. It's going to go public internationally Wednesday afternoon on IMBA's website, imba.com news/news. If you turn to page 6, you'll see a picture of Larry, and then below that, Fayetteville, Arkansas, bronze. So Fayetteville, Arkansas is now a bronze ride setter by IMBA standards. It's kind of like, IMBA's model trails are kind of like the Hall of Fame in football. You reach a standard, bronze, silver, or gold. There's only one gold ride center in the United States. It's Park City, Utah. There's plenty of silver and bronze. The reason that Fayetteville got a bronze determination is due to the fact that, number one, there's no purpose-built, machine-built mountain bike trails or a jump park or a free ride park, as per se like Slaughter Pen Free Ride Park, which a lot of you are familiar with. If you turn back a page, I don't know if you want to, page 4, Silver Ride Centers, Bentonville, Arkansas. There's a nice picture of a local rider above there at the one of the connector trails between Bella Vista and Blowing Springs. Bentonville received the silver status due to the fact they have machine-built, purpose-built mountain bike trails in Slaughter Pen and Blowing Springs, and they were able to use Hobbs, which is within 30 minutes of downtown Bentonville, to increase their mileage. So, in order to change the status in Fayetteville, Mr. McKnight, your question last month, what Fayetteville needs to do is develop a little bit of purpose-built mountain bike trails. So potentially, what my plan is to facilitate some trail builders and some funding locally and internationally through IMBA's regional fund to maybe do a little jump park in the regional park. It's all right with Connie. That's potentially what I have planned to do as a regional director, and I think that will suffice the silver status and help Fayetteville jump to that status maybe in a year or two. So that's where we're at right now. Fayetteville should be very, very fortunate and thankful that they have a bronze status, because if you look at the other cities, Marquette, Michigan, Valley of the Sun, and Scottsdale, Arizona, so on and so forth, there's some pretty significant towns in the country that have bronze status. And the fact that Bentonville got silver is partly due to the fact of their integration of their paved system, i.e. the Crystal Bridges trail system, into the Slaughter Pen soft service trail system. It makes a big difference when you have paved service integrated into soft service, and hopefully we can do that with Mount Kessler with the Razorback Greenway extension, as well as hopefully keeping the trail around Lake Fayetteville in good shape and open all the way around the lake. If that fails to happen with the trail around Lake Fayetteville, if that trail ever becomes closed, then Fayetteville will probably lose their bronze status for an interim period of time, unfortunately, because we needed those miles and we needed that beginner trail. It was huge because there is no more beginner trail in Fayetteville. So Lake Fayetteville Trail is very important for the Ride Center status. So just keep that in mind moving forward. If you have other people facilitating to you in the future for recommendations as a Parks Board, that Lake Fayetteville Trail is very important for this status, for beginner trail, and getting kids on bikes there. So, and then if you go to a couple more pages to page 8 and 9, page 8 actually, you'll see, and this is just a nice benefit for the state of Arkansas, the Lake Ouachita Vista Trail, called the Levitt Trail, is now an IMBA Epic Trail, which is basically the Hall of Fame, and a lot of you are familiar with IMBA Epics. And then to the right of that, the Upper Buffalo Mountain Bike Trails in Red Star, Arkansas is also an IMBA Epic Trail, and that is a serious distinction internationally. IMBA will be promoting that worldwide on their website as of Wednesday afternoon this
Steve,
week.
I have a very important question. Is that you in the picture?
Actually, it is, yes.
Yes, it is?
Yeah.
Very nice.
What gave it away?
Yeah. I don't know how that got there. It had nothing to do with that, I promise you, but yeah, that's me. That's a few months ago. We had IMBA's MTB project mapping specialist here, and we mapped all the trails in Northwest Arkansas. She was here for a week. She wore me out. It was horrible. I was too old for that. So those are really good, cool distinctions that are happening in this area. That's one of the reasons IMBA's here, is to help promote Arkansas. It's happening. You build trails and people will come, and they're coming. And the economic impact is huge, as a lot of you know. And I do have a lot of information about economic impacts. I'm not going to go into that. Okay, anybody have any questions about the Ride Center status?
So now that we're going to do bronze, now that we're going to do silver, what is the next step after that?
Gold.
Gold?
Mm-hmm.
And how far behind are we on gold?
Well,
what does that look like? Just
Park
out
City,
of-
Utah has 225 miles of single track mountain bike trails.
That's
And they have lift and rides with chair lifts. They have 4 or 5 brew pubs. They have, yeah.
You
But-
said
but-
that was the only gold in the country. Is that the only gold in the world?
Yes, it is. It's the only gold period. Now, I know that Bend, Oregon is actually in the process of applying for a gold status, and I'll be going there in September for work and pleasure. But Bend, Oregon also has about 200 miles of single track. They have purpose-built trail. They have downhill trails. They have flow trails. They have 6 or 7 brew pubs right in town, which is significant.
Yep.
And the above and beyond part of the Ride Center status talks about brew pubs. It talks about bike shuttles. I've solicited some of the mountain bike or the bike shops in the local area to start bike shuttles. So if somebody wants to go ride at Hobbs or at Mount Kessler or wherever, they can get a shuttle over there, get dropped off, and ride their bike. That's a big part of the above and beyond. The brew pubs, the restaurant facilities, Crystal Bridges Museum is another reason that Bentonville received, got a little bit more kudos for that status. So, but believe me, when I say as a regional director and as also as a citizen of Northwest Arkansas, I'm going to try as hard as I can to facilitate the silver status. Being a gold, Philip, is probably
Way off.
But here's a good thing. In this evaluation application process, it talks about regional ride centers. They started the regional ride center application process in 2008. No one's ever applied for it. So, in working with Alta Planning, Northwest Council, the Walton Family Foundation, as well as the state level with State Parks and Tourism, that's something that I want to change. I want to make Northwest Arkansas a regional ride center. It'll be the first one ever, and I think I can pull it off. It might take a couple of years. I've been lobbying for it a lot. I hate to use that word, but I've had a lot of IMBA staff here. The executive director's been here. A couple board members have been here. Mapping specialists have been here. Trail Solutions director's been here. They've all ridden there. They love it. They like the idea. No one's actually applied for it. So I'm hoping that in the next year or two, we can facilitate that and make this a regional ride center, which would encompass, even let's say, we can move the epicenter over and encompass Two Rivers Park north of Branson and everything at Hobbs, Leatherwood, and Eureka Springs, all the way down to Lake Fort Smith State Park. So that's what my hope is. And then we can have some serious shuttles and get people from bike shops to the trails and back.
What's the distribution on this magazine? How many
issues?
Yeah. How many people see this?
Well, mine came in the mail today.
So that's one.
Every
We got
IMBA
one.
member gets one, and I believe there's 365,000 IMBA members worldwide. And then all the corporate sponsors. Did you get one, Connie, in the mail? Fayetteville, Parks and Rec? Your office might have gotten one because you guys are a sponsor of IMBA, corporate sponsor. All the corporate sponsors, all the bike industry folks, all the bike shop, all the bike industry retailers, wholesalers, IMBA International, which is in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, also gets copies. And it'll be on their website Wednesday afternoon, so it'll be international, worldwide. So
365 potential tourists got this.
365,000.
My mistake.
It's 1,000 a day.
Yes.
And our city is a member of IMBA.
Yes.
So some of those members are massive.
Yeah.
Steve, I wonder if, this is a good presentation to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, but I think this would be helpful for the city council also.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Would
Yes.
you be willing to come to give such a presentation? Might have to be at the agenda session as opposed to the regular meeting, but at one of those two meetings, would you be able to do
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I'll talk to the mayor. As you know, he's very committed to trails.
Yes.
We've vastly increased the amount of trail building in the last few years and are committed to go forward. But it helps to have this kind of information to reinforce the message. And so, if you don't mind, I will ask the city council to be able to, schedule a time for you to present either to the city council meeting or at the agenda session, which is at 4:30 on Tuesdays.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How'd you get your name highlighted in all 375,000 copies?
It's part of the job. So, it's pretty plain and simple. The application process is pretty significant. I mean, there's pages and pages, and Marlo and Marilyn helped me, and Allison, and they were instrumental in helping out. It was quite a long, lengthy process. The process starts by an IMBA staff, field staff, me, recommending the application process to these local cities and areas and municipalities, and then walking them through the process of the application and submitting it to IMBA's. And the IMBA staff that makes that determination is our communication staff, our development staff, and our Trail Solutions staff. So I had nothing to do with the determination. I just had to do with getting the application process going. So,
Can you give us the cost on the jump park? Do you know what that's going to cost?
for a jump park,
What is that what we needed?
you know,
Need a bulldozer, man.
I'll tell you what. I can give you some ballpark figures.
How much?
If let's say, for instance, this is hypothetically.
$15 a linear foot.
No, hypothetically, if we could put in a 2-mile flow / jump park, like a similar to a slaughter pen, which it's called a free ride park. We could probably do it for $100,000, and it would be really nice. The city of Rogers is putting in a bike park. They're putting in, I think, 10 miles of single track Lake Atlanta projects. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure. They're also putting in a bike park right now, which is $1 million project that Progressive Trail Design's facilitating. Yeah, it's huge. It's going to be unbelievable. Jumps, boardwalks, all kinds of stuff. It's ridiculous. It's awesome. We don't need that. What we need is a nice little flow, mini free ride park, hopefully attached to the regional park, hopefully attached to a connector up to Mount Kessler, hopefully with some educational and maybe a few more miles of hiking and mountain bike trails on Mount Kessler. That's what we need.
And then the paved trail close.
And the paved trail coming right down to it. Exactly. That would be perfect. And I think we can make that happen as residents of this area. There's no problem. We have the passionate people here that are doing their jobs. We have the foundations that want to support us, and we have cities that have trail envy. So everyone's on the same page. So that's kind of my goal. It's been just a blessing for me to have this position that I took 9-10 months ago, and to be able to really take it to the next level. And so my plan is to take it even further. One other thing I want to share with the Ride Center, and I'll get on to the trail building school, because this has been a long meeting. IMBA has a World Summit every 2 years. It's being held this month in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I'll be out there for a week working hard. Bentonville has applied for World Summit 2016 to be in Bentonville, Arkansas. And I know I've talked with Marilyn here and Marlowe, and I've talked with the City of Rogers, the City of Springdale, about helping facilitate that as well. One city has to apply, or one area has to apply. I think we can do it as a regional approach. So I guess my help for you guys as support moving down the road with this is, if you hear about IMBA World Summit coming here in 2016, please support it and let people know that it can happen here. And the more trails we have in a short period of time, we're getting ready to do a bunch of trail development in Bella Vista, and as well as a new bike. Well, I can't mention that. What's going on in Rogers, and also some development in Springdale. That's going to help facilitate World Summit here in 2016. And there's some other things that are going to be coming out public here real soon about some more development. So just keep that in mind, because if World Summit comes here in 2016, all the bike park industry folks will be here from all over the world. At Steamboat Springs, there'll probably be 700 people registered for the summit, as well as another 400 or 500 bike industry people there. So it'd be really good for the community at large. We could shuttle people down. If they do hold it in Bentonville, we could shuttle them down to Kessler. We could shuttle them out to Hobbs. We could shuttle them to Mount Sequoia, and they could ride wherever they want to. We'd have a schedule that they would sign up for every day after the meetings. So just keep that in mind. Any more questions about the Ride Center status?
Thanks for all your hard work.
No worries.
Yeah, awesome.
I would actually like to make a recommendation. Would it be appropriate for staff to draft a letter to IMBA, just thanking them for not only placing a regional director in our state or in our area, but also for, putting a person of Steve's caliber and dedication to the trails in this area. And I want to specifically mention in that letter that he's been to every single Parks meeting since he's taken that post. Have you missed one?
I haven't fallen asleep either.
He hasn't fallen asleep.
I've missed one or two, but
I think if you missed one, you probably were out of state.
I was mountain biking in Colorado or something.
Yeah. But, those type of things are important for an organization like that to hear. They need to know that we're grateful for that.
Definitely do that.
I appreciate
Great
that,
idea.
Richie. Gosh, I just lost my train of thought about that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
School.
Huh?
Trail building school.
Yeah, trail building school. Okay. South Central Region is where I'm located. I'm the regional director for South Central Region. I have some funding available every year I get from the Trek Fund and the Bell Fund, which are bike industry folks. So I've earmarked $10,000 in Mount Kessler. I've talked to Bob Koch at the FNHA and talked to Connie. I think Connie knows about it, and some of the other people in the Parks Department. Mayor Jordan knows about it. So part of the funds I'm going to spend on Advanced Trail Building School. What that entails is getting local volunteers, i.e. ORC. I want to invite a couple guys from Little Rock, a couple guys from Bentonville area, FAST, Friends at Slaughter Pen Trail, and have IMBA's expert trail building specialists come in and give us a class on advanced trail building. Now, personally, I know the trail builders in the area, and we have outstanding trail builders, no question about it. And I think a lot of you can attest to that, because you know them as well. But this will take them to the next level. This is a level 2 certificate. The next thing after that would be having your own trail building company. I really believe that between those Ozark cyclists, the trail dogs down in central Arkansas, and some of the guys at FAST, we have some of the best trail builders in the world because we have some of the rockiest terrain and the hardest trail to build. What we're going to do is, and I've talked to Connie about this earlier and before, we want to have the classroom stuff done at Frank Sharp's place on Mount Kessler. He said that was fine. He'll help with food and beverages. And then maybe do a day or day and a half out on the trail system, maybe doing a little bit of armoring, just some touching up. The trail hasn't really been touched due to the foreclosure issue and us trying to promote it, and finally we got the city and the foundation to go in and buy it, so that's a good thing. We won't be building any new trail. We might be assessing areas for new trail. I did get the environmental study that was done by Theo recently, and I do know some sensitive areas, and we'll be mindful of that. So I think, as I told Connie, we'll be on the trail. We'll have the trail still open, but we'll be doing some armoring, and the theme of the class will be hand-cut single track utilizing natural features, and Mount Kessler is a perfect place to do that. So there'll be no funds from the city. It'll be from the South Central Trail Building Fund. The class is going to cost anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, depending on how many people attend, how many people from IMBA have to come in. I think I'm going to have 2 guys come in, trail specialists, and these guys build trail professionally for a living. So I think it's a great thing for the community. I'm also including Central Arkansas, other people in Northwest Arkansas, as well as inviting some folks from Oklahoma City that are an IMBA chapter over there. So I think, you know, showing that, showing the love to the other areas in the region and holding it here will also promote more mountain biking here, and people will come into the area that haven't been here and see the expert trail builders that your community has already, and then take everybody to the next level, and then they can go back and share with their own organizations throughout the region. So if that's okay with you guys, I don't think I need approval from you. I think, yeah, okay. Connie said that was fine. I think it's a great idea, and it's no cost to the city, so it's awesome.
Do you have a date yet, Steve?
Tentatively, the dates are October 23 through 25th, I believe. And you guys are welcome to come and hang out. You're not going to be part of the class, but if you want to come and meet some of the IMBA Trail Solutions specialists, that's fine. Frank will have, I'm sure, throw down some killer food and probably have a beer too, or I don't know. But
we're coming.
Pardon me?
We're coming.
Yeah. So, well, good. Any questions about the trail building school?
No, it's awesome. Thanks, Steve.
You guys are easy.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, next up is the bird blind.
Yes.
No, they're actually requested to be on September.
To be on September? Okay. So I guess we need to table the addendum, or are we going to go ahead and ask them to consider it and then hear all the justifications then? Yeah, I think we probably need to table this.
This was
We
the
didn't
naming?
get we did not get the justification that we needed, that we like to give to you for your consideration in naming a facility. We thought we would have it here tonight, but it didn't come forth, so.
So a motion to table, is that what we need to do?
Yeah.
Second.
Roll, please, Melanie.
Watson,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Caldwell,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Prophet,
Yes.
All right, next up is the capital improvement plan.
I think you all received in your attachments kind of the short form.
Yep.
That might be able to help you. I might just give one explanation. You know, the Gully Park purchase is still in the making. It's called the Gully Park Trail and Light Renovation, and if you looked up the project, it also said, or it could be for the purchase of Gully Park. The mayor signed, and I think they received it back this afternoon. Is that right, Allison? They were supposed to receive the Dunn signature on it, on a contract, so we'll be ready to go to council. The city purchased it for $970,000. We have a for the city. I guess it's at $1.1 million. $970,000 to come from the city, and the remaining $130,000 to come from, the Fayetteville Natural Heritage Association. Do you want to give any comments on that, Wade?
Yeah,
Wade.
covered it perfect. Everything looks real good as far as the funding from FNHA. Well, it'll be pledged by them, but it's we're coming real close to having that base coverage. So.
Okay. And what we said in it, that we would pay down $700,000 this year, and then $270 is in the contract for 2015, and then 2016, the remaining $130,000 that would be pledged by Fayetteville Natural Heritage Group.
I think it's the 270 is 1,016, and then the last 130 is 1,017.
Oh, that's right. You're right. That's right. I'm sorry.
And we did receive the,
We did, okay.
offer and acceptance signed by the owners today. It's all subject to city council approval, so it will be presented to the city council for their approval in the near future.
And Connie, tell me again how many acres that is.
It's 9.75, I think, is that correct? 9.75, then plus 1.25?
Just under 11.
Just under 11.
Maybe too early to tell, but what additional plans for that acreage exist, or maybe on the forefront?
We will have a master plan meeting in that neighborhood and ask the citizens how they would like that to be developed. We do have some people that are talking about making it into some type of an aging facility. That's something that would come up. You know, we've talked about trails, we've talked about leaving it natural.
Mostly dog parks, though.
Yeah, we've had dog parks and stuff
Splash
also.
park.
But I really want to thank...
Aquatic center.
I really want to thank Kit for his work in helping us with that, with Botanical Garden, and what else have we kept?
Well, I worked for Botanical Gardens. I didn't do much on this. I think you ought to thank Wade.
Yeah, Wade, thank you.
And, and the other thing is that what you need to know is that the agreement by the alderman representing that ward was that this money would come from what had been planned to develop Gully Park.
Right.
So that money is now going to be spent to expand Gully Park rather than to develop it. So there won't be probably a whole ton of development out there for a while.
Is that the splash pad? Is that the splash pad?
Is that Justin's ward?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the splash pad?
No, the splash pad would be later on.
I'm saying, are we going to lose the splash pad? Because I'm going to change my vote.
I think what it'll be is delayed.
Delayed.
It doesn't mean that it won't be developed, but they did decide to dedicate the money that was going to develop Gully Park and instead expand it.
Right now, the splash pad at Gully and at Walker is in year 2018.
Connie, was there,
And it's still up to the city council too. I mean, city council could decide, no, we'd rather develop it, we don't want to spend the money that way, or whatever they want to decide. It's up to city council.
It'd be a shame if we miss this opportunity.
did we, last meeting there was talk about appraising the two lots with the houses on them. Did we get that appraisal?
Yes. The two combined were around $330,000.
Okay, and do you know if the city's planning on selling those lots, or?
I think we are interested.
I think the intent was to definitely sell the nicer home, and the other home has been recommended by everybody that's been around it to raise it. And then that would maybe provide additional parking or access to that part of the park.
Okay. I was just curious, it was brought up at the last meeting and
Yeah.
discuss it. Nice work, Wade.
Good job.
Absolutely.
So I'm mainly concerned about where the splash pad is in this, and there's a reason why. It was when my wife and I went to Bentonville on a Saturday to go to the splash pad, and I saw 4 other couples from my neighborhood and their children, all spending their money in Bentonville, which just curls my toes. But I have there is a sharp demand for the splash pad. I hear it all the time. So if I tell somebody in my age group with children, with small children, that I'm on the Parks Board or Parks Council or whatever we're called, they immediately say, why don't we have a splash pad? I want a splash pad.
John and Paul.
Just my 2 cents.
This is our proposal to you. It is going on to city council tomorrow, but we can give, we can change our recommendation.
Is there a motion?
Allison, do you want to go through this?
Or is we going to go through it?
Do you want us to go through it, or have you already?
I think it's self-explanatory.
Is there any room for moving things up and down? The dollar amounts are roughly the same.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any?
Certainly make a recommendation to the city council if you feel like splash pad number one. That's, you can make that recommendation.
My argument would be that the Gully Park trail and lighting renovation, while needed, and I live right there, it is needed. It doesn't necessarily, people are not driving to Bentonville to go to walk a trail, a lighted trail. Now, they might go to Crystal Bridges, but we're not losing anybody to that.
Well, what we look at when we're looking at projects and how we prioritize them, one is safety. Safety is very high. And I think, the lighting definitely needs to be improved at Gully, have it comparable to what we have at Wilson. And the trail is in pretty bad shape for as many people as we have using out there.
And I will not deny that, however, so is that something that is 4 years more important than keeping and you know this, that area is growing by families, with young children. Those people want a splash pad. I think that my point has been made on how vital I think the splash pad is. But I just want to make sure that I understand why this order is there. I mean, there's probably a good reason. I know that you guys do a good job, so I'm just hoping.
Well, and one of the other things is we try to put them in different wards so that everybody gets a piece of the pie a little bit. And since we're just now spending $970,000 on Gully for the purchase of it, I think some of the aldermen would like to have a project in their ward, so maybe that needs to, that will probably fall back. Now,
It would be for a splash pad at Wilson or Walker.
Walker is a huge one that we see.
You can accommodate more lower income folks.
Yeah. And we're talking about a lot bigger than the ones I think that you've been at. These would be really...
Like Bellagio big?
Yeah.
Fayetteville size.
Okay.
What's the plan as far as the trail at Gully? I mean, are you planning on keeping it paved? Is there any room for us creating that as like a soft chat, a wider soft chat, and it's a lot less expensive than paving it? I mean, that's a huge cost.
That would be something I would like to bring up at a public meeting and give the public time to comment on that, just because we do have a lot of senior citizens that utilize that, and they like the sure footing. I would hate to, change that. Not that it's not a great idea, but I think we would need to visit with that community and see what they would prefer as a surface on it.
In the past, too, we talked about parallel trails, soft surface and hard surface. And of course, you're going to have washing issues. You definitely want the soft surface below the hard surface. But yeah, the problem is it's the you've got to maintain the soft surface a lot of times.
I mean, just coming from Austin and seeing, having grown up around a granite chat that's 12, 15 miles long, and it's probably 15, 20 feet wide. I mean, it has tens of thousands of people utilizing it daily, and there's really no issues, and very little issue with drainage and long-term maintenance of it. And in comparison to pavement, I would say significantly less requirements, because with the pavement, it doesn't have the heavy traffic, so you get the splits and the cracks that have to go out and get repaired. You have the grass that gets into it and breaks it up at the edge, so it continually is decreasing the size. You don't have that.
If you have a crack, it's a hazard,
Yeah,
and you won't get a crack in there.
you don't get cracks.
So what is chat? I'm not familiar with that surface.
Well, I mean, it could be limestone, it could be granite, it could be, you know,
Some people call it grit.
it's just
Real
fine aggregate.
Quarter-inch or less.
So it's not slick, it's not,
It packs really
It
easy.
packs in.
It's rough, I guess, rough angles, not rounded.
No. It's significant decrease.
We can look at that when we get up to that, and maybe when we have our public meeting.
Sure.
If the Gully Park project is approved to purchase it, when we have our public meeting, we'll include that in the dialogue. I think that's a good thing to do. So, we kind of need to,
Do we need to go over, or is there a motion?
I make a motion that the CIP plan be approved as presented.
There's a second. Can we take roll?
Profit,
yes.
Watson,
Yes.
McKnight,
Yes.
Priest,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
Paul,
No.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Caldwell, Lamb,
Yes.
All right, next up is announcements. August 1st, adult flag football registration begins, along with the dive-in movie, which is Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. August 4th is adult fall kickball registration begins. August 5th, City Council approval of Arkansas Parks and Tourism Outdoor Recreation Grant Request, and approval of the Hay lease, and approval of capital improvement plan. August 7th, Gully Park concert is the Ben Miller Band. August 10th, adult fall softball registration ends. August 11th through the 14th is adult summer softball tournament. August 16th is Tyson Foods annual softball tournament. August 17th is the last day of open for Wilson Pool. August 18th is adult fall softball games begin. 18th through the 21st is summer adult kickball tournament. August 22nd is youth fall soccer kickoff celebration, and August 23rd is youth fall soccer practice begins.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
hey, I just have just
Oh.
Withdraw motion to adjourn.
just a little tidbit.
You need to make an amendment.
Because I have experienced, had an experience of injury on our trail system, I do out there want to encourage all of our trail users to not go past the speed limit, to make certain that you stay on the right side of the trail. It is like a highway. Watch your children, because we've had several accidents, not just mine. 4 days after me, we have a guy that's in Fayetteville that is now paralyzed right now. Hopefully he'll come out of it. He's in Little Rock. So we've had some pretty terrible things that's happened out there, and it takes all of us to help educate people, and when they are doing something wrong or have a dog leash all the way across the trail, if we can help make it a little bit safer in our public, if they will work with their children and other park users, it could, we want to make our trail as safe as possible, so we need everybody's help to do that. That's it. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Connie. Adjourn?
Gully Park, Thursday night.